Chapter 493. Xiao Chen said helplessly. Seeing this, Gu Lingyao was secretly unhappy, but there was nothing she could do. After all, the Tianqi sect needed Xiao Chen. Gu Lingyao glared fiercely at Xiao Chen and said snappily, "Say it. What do you need our help with?" "Haha, I knew that Miss Lingyao is considerate and warm-hearted. You will definitely help." Xiao Chen smiled when he heard Gu Lingyao's words. Facing Xiao Chen's smile, Gu Lingyao said without any good expression, "Say it quickly. What do you want us to help you with?" Gu Lingyao only wanted Xiao Chen to go to the Tianqi sect as soon as possible. After hearing Gu Lingyao's words, Xiao Chen did not beat around the bush and directly told Gu Lingyao his plan. In fact, Xiao Chen suddenly thought of asking the Tianqi sect for help. Of course, it was also thanks to Gu Lingyao's appearance at this time. However, it had to be said that Gu Lingyao came at the right time. With the help of the Tianqi sect, the matter of the Wuyue Empire would be easier to handle. It was not difficult for Xiao Chen to ask the Tianqi sect for help. It was nothing more than for the Tianqi sect to express their support for the third prince, Chu Wuming, to become the crown prince. At the same time, he also hoped that the Tianqi sect could send experts to help when annihilating the Blood Moon Guard. After all, the strength of the Blood Moon Guards could not be underestimated. Even if Xiao Chen and Chu Wuming were able to annihilate them, they would suffer heavy losses. Originally, Xiao Chen had already accepted the price of annihilating the Blood Moon Guards. However, now that Gu Lingyao was here, there was no need for that. It was obviously not difficult for the Tianqi sect to annihilate a Blood Moon Guard. Secondly, Xiao Chen also hoped that the Tianqi sect could help block the Qingyang sect when the Wuyue Empire attacked the Tianlang Empire. After all, no one knew if the Qingyang sect would intervene. Just these two requests. How is it? Very simple, right? Xiao Chen looked at Gu Lingyao. Very simple? Hearing Xiao Chen's words, Gu Lingyao wanted to tear this guy apart. How was this simple? Neither of the two requests made by Xiao Chen were simple. Seeing that Gu Lingyao was glaring at him with anger, Xiao Chen waved his hand and said, "There's no other way. I have to finish these things before I leave. If the Tianqi sect isn't willing to help, then I can only go to the Tianqi sect after I'm done." "You? Fine, I will inform father and let him make the decision." Xiao Chen's words were full of threats. In response, Gu Lingyao was furious, but he still suppressed the anger in his heart and said coldly. Gu Lingyao couldn't make the decision on this matter, and could only report it to Gu Lingyao. Hearing Gu Lingyao's words, Xiao Chen naturally had no objections. Then, Gu Lingyao left with Tian Guochuan. After leaving Xiao Chen's courtyard, Gu Lingyao said coldly with an angry face, "Xiao Chen, you'd better not fall into my hands. How dare you threaten me?" "Humph." Gu Lingyao, who had always been mischievous, suffered a great loss at Xiao Chen's hands today and couldn't do anything to Xiao Chen. After telling the truth about Xiao Chen to Gu Qi, who was in the Tianqi sect, Gu Qi replied a day later and agreed to Xiao Chen's request. Moreover, he had already sent 3 elders to Jinshan City. They were expected to arrive within 3 days. Gu Qi agreed to Xiao Chen's request and even sent 3 elders. After all, the Tianqi sect was one of the 2 great sects in Danyang County. Those who could become elders were at least at the Dao Emperor realm. Of course, there weren't many elders in the Tianqi sect. There were only 10 of them. They sent 3 elders to help at once. In this way, including Tian Guochuan who was by Gu Lingyao's side, the Tianqi sect sent a total of 4 elders. With these 4 people, it wouldn't be difficult for Xiao Chen to destroy the Blood Moon Guards. He immediately told Xiao Chen the news. After receiving the news, Xiao Chen was overjoyed. 4 Dao Emperors. This way, things would be much simpler. Xiao Chen's confidence increased greatly after obtaining the support of the Tianqi sect. He then patiently waited for the day of the banquet to arrive. Time passed day by day. Soon, it was the day that Chu Wuming invited the 4 great armies to the banquet. On this day, Besides Zhao Feng, who was already in Jinshan City, the other 3 generals of the armies also arrived in Jinshan City, one after another. The Moonless Empire had a total of 4 great armies guarding Hulao Pass. Apart from the Jinshan army that had already submitted to Chu Wuming, there were also the Weiyuan army, White Flame army, and Iron Armor army. On this day, the generals of the 3 great armies all arrived in Jinshan City. Moreover, because it was Chu Wuming's banquet, they only brought personal guards, and the number of people did not exceed 100. Time quickly came to the evening. In the Jinshan City General's estate, this place had become the banquet venue for Chu Wuming today. In the enormous main hall, Chu Wuming sat on the main seat while Xiao Chen sat beside him. Being able to sit on the same level as Chu Wuming showed that Xiao Chen's status was extremely high. Apart from Zhao Feng, the generals of the other 3 great armies were secretly unhappy about this, but they did not say anything. After all, Xiao Chen was the nephew of the sky-burning retired emperor. This was not a secret in the Moonless Empire. At the beginning of the banquet, the atmosphere was very lively. Chu Wuming also gradually toasted Zhao Feng and the other 3. Everyone chatted as they drank. There were not many people attending the banquet this time. It could even be said that there were very few people. In the entire main hall, there were only Zhao Feng and the other 3 generals, Xiao Chen and Chu Wuming. After drinking to their heart's content, they felt that it was about time. At this time, Xiao Chen and Chu Wuming looked at each other. Then, Chu Wuming slowly stood up. Following Chu Wuming's action, Zhao Feng and the other 3 generals all quieted down. Of course, Zhao Feng knew the true purpose of this banquet, so he did not find it strange at all about what Chu Wuming was going to do next. However, the other 3 generals were somewhat puzzled. They did not understand what Chu Wuming was going to do. Slowly walking to the center of the main hall, Chu Wuming looked at the other 3 generals aside from Zhao Feng and spoke with a gentle smile on his face. 3 generals, this prince has had a question in his heart recently. Since all 3 of you are here today, this prince would like to ask for some advice from the 3 generals. Chu Wuming's words confused the 3 generals. They did not know what he meant, but the 3 generals still respectfully replied. Your Highness is overpraising us. We are only vulgar people. What qualifications do we have to advise your Highness? Haha, the 3 generals are too modest. In truth, the question in this prince's heart is very simple. The 3 generals will definitely be able to answer this prince's question. Hearing this, Chu Wuming laughed loudly. After laughing, Chu Wuming paused for a moment, then said unhurriedly, the 3 generals should all know about the battle for the position of Crown Prince. Who do you think the position of Crown Prince should belong to in the end? Begging for your collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 494. Who do the 3 generals think the position of Crown Prince should belong to in the end? Following Chu Wuming's words, the faces of the 3 generals immediately changed. Although they were generals and didn't have the petty thoughts of those civil officials, it didn't mean they were stupid. At this time, Chu Wuming had asked such a question. His meaning was very clear. He wanted the 3 generals to pick a side. The battle for the Crown Prince could be said to have caused an uproar in the Moonless Empire. Almost all of the civil and military officials knew about it. At the same time, the 3 princes were wantonly trying to rope in the nobles of the empire. However, until now, the generals who held military power had never been roped in by the princes because Chu Mu didn't allow it. Today, Chu Wuming wanted the 3 generals to pick a side so openly. What was he trying to do? Was he not afraid of touching Chu Mu's bottom line? Looking at Chu Wuming with eyes full of suspicion, the 3 generals had a myriad of thoughts in their hearts. Facing the gazes of the 3, Chu Wuming faintly smiled and continued. What? Is this question very hard to answer? Chu Wuming was no longer roping them in, but undisguised coercion. He was forcing the 3 generals to pick a side. Facing Chu Wuming's coercion, the 3 generals looked at each other. Soon after, the Wei Yuan army gradually stood up and looked at Chu Wuming, speaking in an unfriendly tone. Your Highness the Third Prince, this general has no intention of offending you. However, if I may be so bold as to ask your Highness, are your Highness not afraid of violating His Majesty's taboo by doing this? Although the battle for the Crown Prince is incomparably fierce, even His Highness the First and Second Prince have never dared to have any thoughts of roping us in. I believe your Highness the Third Prince knows the reason. Today your Highness is forcing us to pick a side. May I ask if your Highness isn't afraid of violating heaven's might? The meaning of Wei Yuan army's commander's words was very clear. Although Chu Wuming and the other two princes had been fighting to the death for the position of Crown Prince, the three of them had never taken a step into some uncrossable minefields, the most crucial of which was military power. Chu Mu could turn a blind eye to the nobles that didn't have any military power. However, if the three princes dared to recruit generals like Zhao Feng and company, Chu Mu would definitely be enraged because this was his bottom line. Everyone knew that this was a minefield that could not be crossed. However, recently Chu Wuming had boldly crossed it. Moreover, he was so brazen. This made the three generals of the Wei Yuan army feel shocked. At the same time, they also felt that Chu Wuming was too outrageous. Facing the questioning of the Wei Yuan army's commander, Chu Wuming still had a smile on his face. At the same time, Xiao Chen, who had been drinking by himself, put down the cup in his hand and slowly stood up. Generals, I'm afraid you've misunderstood His Highness' intentions. The Crown Prince is the foundation of the empire. Now that the position of Crown Prince has not been decided for a long time, it has caused the people to panic. This is not beneficial to the empire's long-term stability. As a prince, how can His Highness stand by and do nothing? Thus he hopes that the three generals can help, Xiao Chen spoke slowly. Hearing this, the commander of the Wei Yuan army looked coldly at Xiao Chen and shouted angrily. Xiao Chen, this is a matter of the imperial family. What right do you have to interfere? We are only loyal to His Majesty and will not participate in the battle for the position of Crown Prince. Xiao Chen's interruption angered the commander of the Wei Yuan army. It had to be said that the commander of the Wei Yuan army was very loyal to Chu Mu. Facing the commander of the Wei Yuan army's angry shout, Xiao Chen did not get angry. He glanced at him indifferently and a trace of disappointment flashed in his eyes. The Wei Yuan army, the White Flame army, and the Iron Armor army. These three armies were all Dao sovereigns. If they could all submit to Chu Wuming, it would definitely be a good thing. However, it seemed that it was impossible now. The commander of the Wei Yuan army alone had no hope. From the series of actions of the commander of the Wei Yuan army, Xiao Chen could already confirm that he was loyal to Chu Mu. He was the kind of person who would not betray Chu Mu even if he died. Obviously, it was impossible to count on such a person to submit to Chu Mu. This was because everyone present knew very well why Chu Wuming wanted to rope in the four armies of Hulao Pass. It was undoubtedly because he wanted to take control of the army and force Chu Mu to make a decision. Just think about it. How could Chu Mu not give the position of Crown Prince to a prince who controlled millions of soldiers? No matter how much Chu Mu liked Chu Wuk and Chu Wushuang, he absolutely had no choice. This was because once he angered Chu Wuming, the consequences would be unimaginable. In fact, if Chu Wuming's ambition was even a little bigger, Chu Mu's position. They all knew this very well, which was why the Wei Yuan army gradually became so agitated. After scolding Xiao Chen angrily, the Wei Yuan army gradually looked at Chu Wuming and then at Zhao Feng and the other two. When he saw Zhao Feng, he found that he had a calm expression. The commander of the Wei Yuan army was stunned at first, but he soon guessed something and shouted angrily, "Zhao Feng, have you already?" "Yes, I have already submitted to His Highness the Third Prince. The Moonless Empire can only become stronger in His Highness' hands. How can I, Zhao Feng, not be loyal to such a wise ruler?" The Wei Yuan army's commander guessed that Zhao Feng had already submitted to Chu Wuming. After all, Chu Wuming had always been living in Jinshan City. Zhao Feng didn't hide this at all and frankly admitted it. Hearing Zhao Feng's words, killing intent appeared in the eyes of the Wei Yuan army's commander. Zhao Feng had submitted to Chu Wuming and even called Chu Wuming a wise ruler. In the ears of the Wei Yuan army's commander, these words were like the bluntness of a rebellion. Zhao Feng, are you trying to rebel? I'll kill you, the commander shouted angrily, but at this moment, Xiao Chen shook his head regretfully and said softly, "What a pity." Xiao Chen seemed to be talking to himself, but as soon as he finished speaking, a terrifying aura descended from the sky. Then, Tian Guochuan's figure appeared in front of the Wei Yuan army's commander without any warning. He stretched out his palm casually and easily grabbed the commander's neck. Dao. Dao Emperor Realm. The Wei Yuan army's commander's expression changed drastically in the face of Tian Guofeng's sudden appearance. At the same time, an extreme aura of death had already enveloped him. Without any hesitation or surprise, Tian Guofeng directly killed the general of Wei Yuan army. Tian Guofeng's appearance was undoubtedly beyond the expectations of the three commanders. Seeing the death of the Wei Yuan army's commander, the expressions of the White Flame Army and the Iron Armor Army changed drastically. At the same time, Xiao Chen spoke again indifferently. His Highness the Third Prince's request today is very simple. There are two paths in front of the two of you. Either you submit and become a marquis in the future, or you die, just like the Wei Yuan army's commander. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 495. Faced with Xiao Chen's indifferent words, the general of the White Flame Army and the general of the Iron Armor Army looked at the corpse of the general of the Wei Yuan army in astonishment. Then, they looked at each other and saw disbelief in each other's eyes. Who would have thought that the third prince, Chu Wuming, would be so daring? Not only did he want to gather the four great armies outside Hulao Pass, he even dared to kill the generals of the four great armies. This was no longer a battle for the position of crown prince. To put it more seriously, it was no different from a rebellion. The two generals did not know what Chu Wuming wanted to do. However, they had no other choice in front of them. Xiao Chen's words were very clear. Tonight, they would either submit or die. The general of the Wei Yuan army already had foresight. Moreover, Chu Wuming also clearly told the two generals that he dared to kill. After a moment of silence, the White Flame Army and the Iron Armor Army gradually knelt in front of Chu Wuming and shouted in a deep voice, "We greet your Highness. We are willing to go through water and tread on fire for your Highness." They did not want to die. At the same time, although the two generals of the White Flame Army and the Iron Armor Army were loyal to the imperial family, they were not loyal to Emperor Chu Mu. Therefore, the two of them chose to submit in the end. Of course, it was still unknown whether their submission was trustworthy. However, Xiao Chen wanted the two of them to make a choice tonight. With the two of them kneeling, the rest of the matter would be easily resolved. Personally helping the two main generals up, Chu Wuming laughed loudly and said, "Haha, to be able to obtain the help of the two generals, there's no need for this prince to worry about not being able to succeed. Generals, please rise." Chu Wuming's smile was very bright. After personally helping the two main generals up, Chu Wuming shouted loudly, "Men, clean up this place." He ordered people to carry the corpse of the general of the Wei Yuan army away. Very quickly, several soldiers from the Battle Dragon camp cleaned up the hall. At the same time, Tian Guochuan also left and the banquet continued. Although the banquet continued, the two commanders of the White Flame Army and the Iron Armor Army were clearly a little uneasy because of what had just happened. It could even be said that they were nervous. The atmosphere became a little awkward. Chu Wuming did not mind the change in the atmosphere. After chatting with the three commanders for an hour, Chu Wuming finally looked at the White Flame Army and the Iron Armor Army. "Since the two generals have already followed me, Then I would like to invite the 2 generals under your command to Jinshan City tomorrow for me to meet them. Finally, they had reached the main topic. They had subdued 2 main generals. However, Xiao Chen did not think that he could control the White Flame Army and the Iron Armor Army, which had hundreds of thousands of soldiers. Therefore, he still needed to clean up the generals of the 2 armies. He needed to replace the important positions with Chu Wuming's men. This was the only way to ensure that nothing would go wrong. After hearing Chu Wuming's words, how could the 2 commanders not know that Chu Wuming was doing this to completely control the White Flame Army and the Iron Armor Army? They could imagine that if these deputy generals were to come to Jinshan City, at least half of them would be killed and replaced with Chu Wuming's trusted subordinate. They did not want to agree to Chu Wuming, but did they have a choice? No. If they did not agree, they would die. After hesitating for a while, the 2 commanders respectfully said, "We will obey your command." Haha, then the 2 of you can stay in Jinshan City for the time being. I have a lot of things to say to the 2 of you. Chu Wuming replied with a smile after hearing their reply. Great, not only did he want to eliminate the deputy generals of the 2 armies, he also wanted to put the 2 commanders under house arrest. This was, of course. After all, it was still unknown whether the 2 of them were really loyal to Chu Wuming. Before things were stabilized, the 2 of them naturally had to stay in Jinshan City. There was also no objection. Then, Chu Wuming asked Zhao Feng to arrange accommodation for the 2 of them in the general's mansion. At the same time, Chu Wuming arranged tens of thousands of Jinshan army soldiers to guard the 2 of them. At the same time, Xiao Chen also arranged for Tian Guochuan to stay in the general's mansion, just in case. After everything was arranged properly, everyone dispersed. The next day, the 2 commanders of the White Flame Army and the Iron Armor Army followed Chu Wuming's instructions and summoned all the generals of the 2 armies to Jinshan City. In this regard, Chu Wuming was naturally fully prepared. Now that the entire Jinshan City was under martial law, hundreds of thousands of Jinshan army soldiers were ready. As long as the commanders of the 2 armies appeared, they would be taken down immediately. While waiting for the arrival of the 2 armies, on the other side, Xiao Chun personally led Zhang Qi, Xikong Ming, and 2 Tianqi sect elders to Wei Yuan army. In order to help Xiao Chun, Gu Qi sent 3 Tianqi sect elders. Together with Tian Guochuan, there were a total of 4 Tianqi sect elders who could be commanded by Xiao Chun. The purpose of bringing people to Wei Yuan army this time was very simple. That was, to completely control Wei Yuan army. Now that Wei Yuan army was gradually falling, what Xiao Chen wanted to do was to support a commander who was willing to follow Chu Wuming. At the same time, he would kill those disobedient commanders and place Chu Wuming's confidence in them, just like the other 2 armies. Only in this way could he completely control Wei Yuan army. The 4 armies were connected by transmission arrays. Through the transmission arrays, Xiao Chen and others came to Wei Yuan City, where Wei Yuan army was located. In the name of Chu Wuming, all the commanders of Wei Yuan army were gathered in the general's mansion. Soon, a total of 23 Wei Yuan army soldiers arrived at the general's mansion in Wei Yuan City. Without any nonsense, Xiao Chen gave these commanders the same choice as last night: either surrender or die. At the same time, Xiao Chen also told the news of the death of the commander of Wei Yuan army. Hearing that the commander was dead, several commanders immediately shouted angrily, "Is His Highness the 3rd Prince trying to rebel? How dare he kill the commander? Kill!" Facing the angry shouts of these commanders, Xiao Chen said indifferently, "He didn't come here today to have a heart-to-heart talk with these people. Since they were not loyal to Chu Wuming, they could only be killed." Zhang Qi and Xikong Ming immediately took action. Accompanied by a bloody massacre, after killing more than half of the commanders, the rest of the commanders finally chose to surrender to Chu Wuming. Among them, there was a commander named Wu Tao who surprised Xiao Chen. This person was very smart, so Xiao Chen appointed him to temporarily take charge of Wei Yuan army. Facing Xiao Chen's arrangement, Wu Tao was very excited. It could be seen that Wu Tao was a very ambitious guy, and such a person was exactly what Xiao Chen needed the most now. There was no need to be afraid of ambition, because as long as you have ambition, you can better control yourself. In just a day, the matter of Wei Yuan army was basically solved. Next, Chu Wuming only needed to send his confidants to the Wei Yuan army. At that time, more than half of the Wei Yuan army would be Chu Wuming's men. In this way, he would be able to quickly control the entire Wei Yuan army. Chapter 496. The situation of the Wei Yuan army had been stabilized for the time being. As for who Chu Wuming would send, Xiao Chen had already thought about it. The soldiers of the Battling Dragon camp were the best choice. Although the cultivation of the soldiers of the Battling Dragon camp wasn't too high, and there was still a big gap between them and the generals, Chu Wuming had to send hundreds of his confidants to the three armies. He could only choose from the Battling Dragon camp. After all, the Battling Dragon camp was Chu Wuming's private army. They had been following Chu Wuming since he was in the imperial capital. There was no problem with their loyalty. It was the best and only choice to send the Battling Dragon camp's soldiers to the three armies in a hurry. Otherwise, Chu Wuming wouldn't be able to send so many confidants in such a short time. However, the soldiers of the Battling Dragon camp were enough for the time being. Soon, Chu Wuming sent hundreds of Battling Dragon camp's soldiers through the teleportation array. Xiao Chen also placed them into the Wei Yuan army one by one. Especially the important positions, they could only be controlled by Chu Wuming. After doing all this, it was already 2 days later. Calculating the time, the generals of the White Flame Army and the Iron Armor Army should be arriving at Jinshan City. Leaving Zhang Qi in the Wei Yuan army as a precaution, Xiao Chen brought Sikong Ming and the others back to Jinshan City. The matter of the Wei Yuan army was almost settled, but it still needed some time to stabilize. Next, it would be the White Flame Army and the Iron Armor Army's turn. After returning to Jinshan City, Xiao Chen met with Chu Wuming and learned that the generals of the two armies would arrive one after another tomorrow. Chu Wuming had already completed the preparations. As long as the generals of the two armies entered Jinshan City, they could be taken down immediately. Everything was ready. The next morning, the first to arrive was the White Flame Army. There were also 23 of them. They successfully entered, but before everyone could react, the soldiers and generals of the Jinshan army suddenly took action. They immediately took down the 23 of them and sealed their cultivation. All of them were locked up in the prison of the general's mansion. Not long after, the Metal Armor Army also arrived. Just like the generals of the White Flame Army, all of them were captured the moment they entered the city. The two armies were all captured. Then, Chu Wuming and Xiao Chen personally came to the dungeon. Just like how they dealt with the Wei Yuan army, they killed more than half of the descenders and gathered those who were willing to surrender. Then, they planted their own people. Only then did Chu Wuming release these people. Within a short 5 days, the Wei Yuan army, the White Flame Army and the Metal Armor Army had all submitted. Of course, Chu Wuming's status also played a huge role in this matter being able to proceed so smoothly. They were originally members of the imperial family, and these generals had been instilled with loyalty to the imperial family from the beginning to the end. Thus, when they pledged their allegiance to Chu Wuming, other than a few people, the other generals did not have much resistance. It was very clear that if it was someone else, it would not be so easy to subdue these generals. It had to be said that Chu Wuming's status also played a huge role. The 4 armies of Hulao Pass were already under Chu Wuming's control. The next step was to deal with the Blood Moon Guards. After all, if the Blood Moon Guards were in Chu Wuming's hands, it would be a huge threat to Chu Wuming. He had never thought of subduing the Blood Moon Guards because it was simply impossible. The Blood Moon Guards were Emperor Chu Mu's personal army. They only listened to Chu Mu's orders and were absolutely loyal to Chu Mu. There was no possibility of them joining anyone else. Thus, when facing the Blood Moon Guards, Chu Wuming and Xiao Chen's thoughts were surprisingly the same: kill them. In the study of the general's residence, Xiao Chen and Chu Wuming sat opposite each other. Looking at Xiao Chen, Chu Wuming said, "Brother Xiao, I have already secretly sent someone back to the imperial capital. I believe that father will definitely send the Blood Moon Guards to thoroughly investigate." The news of the Wei Yuan Legion's commander being killed had already been secretly sent back to the imperial capital. After receiving this news, Chu Mu would definitely order the Blood Moon Guards to investigate thoroughly. After all, that was a commander of an army. It would be strange if Chu Mu didn't investigate thoroughly when he died mysteriously. Hearing Chu Wuming's words, Xiao Chen nodded slightly and said, "If that's the case, then let's wait and see. When the Blood Moon Guards arrive, we will immediately take action." Hearing this, Chu Wuming nodded slightly. Just as Xiao Chen and Xiao Chen were discussing, in the imperial palace, Chu Mu also received the news of the Wei Yuan army's general's death. The Wei Yuan army is gradually dying? How is that possible? He is a Dao sovereign expert. How can he die inexplicably? After receiving this news, Chu Mu's first reaction was disbelief, but it quickly turned into fury. A general of an army had died inexplicably. This was definitely a big deal. Chu Mu shouted angrily. Then, as Chu Wuming expected, Chu Mu indeed sent the Blood Moon Guards to investigate. In a deep courtyard deep in the imperial palace, this was the military camp of the Blood Moon Guards. There were only 1,000 of them. Normally, they would not leave this place. They would only take action after receiving Chu Mu's order. On this day, 1,000 Blood Moon Guards gathered in the courtyard. The leader of the Blood Moon Guards was a Dao sovereign expert. Last night, the Blood Moon Guards received Chu Mu's order to immediately head to Hulao Pass to investigate the death of the general of the Wei Yuan army. After receiving the order, the leader of the Blood Moon Guards immediately gathered all the Blood Moon Guards and prepared to head to Hulao Pass. Chu Mu's reaction was very fast. However, as soon as he took action, Xiao Chen and Chu Wuming also received the news. At the same time, the two of them were already prepared to kill the Blood Moon Guards. As for the location, it was obviously in Jinshan City. They had already moved by Riyue and the rest out of Jinshan City in advance. At the same time, as Jinshan City was a military fortress, it naturally had a city protection array. Now, the array was ready to be activated at any time. As soon as the Blood Moon Guards arrived, the array would be activated and the entire Jinshan City would be sealed. They were already prepared to besiege and kill the Blood Moon Guards. The 4 elders of the Tianqi sect, the generals of the 4 armies, and the 200,000 experts in the army were already lying in ambush in Jinshan City. They were only waiting for Chu Wuming's order to take action immediately. Sitting in the general's mansion and waiting for the arrival of the Blood Moon Guards, Chu Wuming looked at Xiao Chen and asked, "Brother Xiao Chen, why do you want the generals of the 3 armies of the Wei Yuan army to participate in the attack?" Originally, according to Chu Wuming's intention, only the Jinshan army and the 4 elders of the Tianqi sect were needed to kill the Blood Moon Guards. However, Xiao Chen insisted on including the generals of the 3 armies of the Wei Yuan army. Although the 3 armies had already submitted to Chu Wuming, it was hard to say how loyal they were. Besieging and killing the Blood Moon Guards was an extremely difficult task. Once the 3 armies were disloyal, things would become even more troublesome. Chapter 497. He did not understand why Xiao Chen did this. Facing Chu Wuming's question, Xiao Chen smiled and said, "Your Highness, it's still unknown whether the 3 armies are loyal or not. I'm only doing this to break their hope." The reason why the Wei Yuan army and the other 2 armies were allowed to participate in the encirclement of the Blood Moon Guards was to cut off their escape route. Thinking about it, once the 3 armies participated in the encirclement of the Blood Moon Guards, it was equivalent to them being tightly tied to Chu Wuming. As such, even if they were disloyal in the future, they would not dare to easily betray him because Emperor Chu Wuming could no longer tolerate them. In order to survive, they naturally had to hug Chu Wuming's thigh tightly. After hearing Xiao Chen's words, Chu Wuming was enlightened and did not say anything else. Indeed, the three armies did not need to contribute much in the encirclement of the Blood Moon Guards. They only needed to participate in the encirclement, and the purpose was to show off to Chu Mu. The entire Jinshan city was now completely under martial law. Around dusk, 1,000 Blood Moon Guards finally appeared from the teleportation formation in Jinshan city. As the teleportation formation lit up, the Blood Moon Guards walked out of it one after another. Looking around, the Blood Moon Guard commander felt that something was amiss the moment he arrived in Jinshan city. The entire Jinshan city was actually so quiet. He furrowed his brows slightly. Such a strange silence made the Blood Moon Guard commander suspicious. However, before he could say anything, the teleportation formation was closed after all the Blood Moon Guards left. At the same time, a gigantic light shield enveloped the entire Jinshan city. The city protection formation was activated. The city protection formation was inexplicably activated. Noticing this, the Blood Moon Guard commander made a prompt decision and shouted coldly, "Be careful and be on guard." As soon as the Blood Moon Guard commander finished speaking, Tian Guochuan and the other 3 celestial equal sect elders led the generals of the other 4 legions and 200,000 soldiers to surround the Blood Moon Guards from all directions. In an instant they surrounded the former Blood Moon Guards. Surrounded in the middle, the Blood Moon Guard's commander frowned as he looked at the 200,000 soldiers with weapons in their hands. A cold glint flashed across his eyes as he said, "For major legions." At a glance, he could tell that these people were from the 4 major armies. Now that they had surrounded the Blood Moon Guards, what did they want to do? Revolt? The commander of the Blood Moon Guards looked at the generals of the 4 legions with overflowing killing intent in his eyes and shouted coldly, "Why? Are the 4 legions rebelling?" Hearing this, the 2 main generals of the White Flame Army and the Iron Armor Army had complicated expressions. Since they appeared here, they had already been labeled as rebels. There was no way out. In the face of the Blood Moon Guard commander's cold shout, the 2 commanders only hesitated for a few breaths. Immediately after, they made up their minds and shouted coldly, "Kill!" Just as Xiao Chun thought, since the 3 major armies appeared here, they had no way out. Since there was no way out, they could only follow Chu Wuming to the end. Following the orders of the 2 main generals, 200,000 soldiers and the generals of the 4 legions immediately besieged the Blood Moon Guards. Seeing this, the commander of the Blood Moon Guard's face darkened again. Sure enough, the 4 major armies were rebelling. He shouted coldly at the Blood Moon Guards, "Kill!" The 2 sides immediately engaged in a fierce battle. In an instant, the entire Jinshan city became a battlefield. However, due to the activation of the city defense array, no one could leave. Hence, the commander of the Blood Moon Guards never thought of escaping. Since he could not escape, he could only fight with all his might. Although there were only 1,000 Blood Moon Guards in the face of an army of 200,000 soldiers, their combat power was extremely terrifying. Not only did they control a powerful battle formation, but their individual strength was also not to be underestimated. Without taking any action, the battle broke out. Xiao Chun and Chu Wuming stood in the air above Jinshan city and watched the fierce battle below. Although it was the first time that Xiao Chun saw the Blood Moon Guards, he could already confirm that the combat power of the Blood Moon Guards was not any weaker than the Sky Wolf Guards of the Sky Wolf Empire. To be honest, Xiao Chun could not bear to see such a powerful army being annihilated in Jinshan city. However, there was no other way. The Blood Moon Guards had to be annihilated. Otherwise, Chu Wuming would not be able to take over the power and Xiao Chun would not be able to achieve his goal. Most importantly, there was not enough time. If there was enough time, Xiao Chun would definitely think of other ways to deal with the Blood Moon Guards. However, Xiao Chun did not have so much time now. He could only use the simplest and most brutal way to deal with the Blood Moon Guards, which was to kill them. The fierce battle broke out. Facing the siege of 200,000 soldiers, the Blood Moon Guards did not show any signs of defeat. On the contrary, they even forced the 200,000 soldiers to retreat. However, the situation was completely reversed with the help of the generals of the 4 legions and Tian Guochuan and the other 3 elders. Not to mention the generals of the 4 legions, just Tian Guochuan and the other 3 Dao emperors were enough to make the Blood Moon Guards feel pressured. Sensing that Tian Guochuan and the other 3 were Dao emperors, the Blood Moon Guard commander's expression changed drastically. Dao emperors, set up the formation and block them. They could only use the formation to block Tian Guochuan and the other 3. Moreover, the formation could only stall for time. If it was just a single Dao Emperor Realm expert, then the Blood Moon Guards would be able to defeat that Dao Emperor Realm expert by relying on their battle formation. Yet now, the Blood Moon Guards were facing an entire 4 Dao Emperors, numerous Dao Kings, and Dao Exalts, and an army of 200,000. As a result, the Blood Moon Guards were naturally unable to stop them. The battle quickly became one-sided as the Blood Moon Guards were killed mercilessly one after another. There were no miracles. In order to kill the Blood Moon Guards, Chu Wuming and Xiao Chen had made thorough preparations. It was impossible for them to leave the Blood Moon Guards any chance of survival. Chu Wuming's eyes were filled with a complicated expression as he watched the Blood Moon Guards being killed one after another. The Blood Moon Guards had to be annihilated for his power. However, from another perspective, the annihilation of the Blood Moon Guards was a loss to the Moonless Empire. After this battle, the Moonless Empire will no longer have the Blood Moon Guards. Your Highness, that's not right. Now, only the Blood Moon Guards that don't belong to Your Highness have been annihilated. In the future, Your Highness can create a Blood Moon Guard that belongs to you, Xiao Chen said indifferently when he heard Chu Wuming's words. The name of the Blood Moon Guards wouldn't disappear. A bright light flashed through Chu Wuming's eyes when he heard Xiao Chen's words. That's right, the name of the Blood Moon Guards wouldn't disappear. When I gain power in the future, I can rebuild the Blood Moon Guards. As the fierce battle continued below, the annihilation of the Blood Moon Guards was a foregone conclusion. The night gradually darkened, and the fierce battle continued. Chapter 498. The sky gradually darkened. After confirming that the Blood Moon Guards could no longer cause any trouble, Xiao Chen and Chu Wuming returned to the general's residence. Although the Blood Moon Guards were still trying their best to resist, the result was obvious. Under the siege of 4 almighty Dao Emperors, close to 100 Dao Kings, Dao Masters, and 200,000 troops of the 4 legions, it was impossible for the Blood Moon Guards to have any plans no matter how strong they were. Being able to persist until now was enough to prove the strength of the Blood Moon Guards. It was a pity that such a powerful army was so pale and powerless in the face of power. After returning to the general's residence, Chu Wuming was obviously in a complicated and heavy mood. He did not say a word. Chu Wuming did not regret killing the Blood Moon Guards because he did not have a second choice. However, personally destroying such a powerful army of the Moonless Empire was indeed a heavy blow to Chu Wuming. Seeing that Chu Wuming was not in a good mood, Xiao Chen took the initiative to say, "Your Highness, now that the matter is basically settled, I will return first." "Brother Xiao, what do you mean? Don't you want to follow me to meet the Blood Moon Guard commander?" Chu Wuming asked doubtfully when he heard Xiao Chen's words. Previously, Xiao Chen had told Tian Guochuan and the other 3 that if possible, it was best to capture the Blood Moon Guard commander alive. Now that Xiao Chen wanted to leave, Chu Wuming naturally found it strange. In fact, Xiao Chen was not interested in the Blood Moon Guard commander. Now that the situation was settled, there was no need for Xiao Chen to continue staying here. Perhaps it would be better for Chu Wuming to meet the Blood Moon Guard commander alone. "I won't see him. Your Highness should meet him alone." Xiao Chen smiled and turned to leave. After a night of bloody battle, the first ray of sunlight shone on the ground. Under the sunlight, the battle in Jinshan City finally came to an end. the entire Jinshan city was filled with corpses. Most of them were soldiers of the 4 major legions. In the battle last night, the Blood Moon Guards fought with all their might and killed 150,000 soldiers. At the same time, 8 soldiers from the 4 legions died in battle. It was indeed a glorious achievement to be able to achieve this with only 1,000 people. However, it was useless. In the end, the Blood Moon Guards did not escape the fate of being destroyed. According to Xiao Chen's orders, the Blood Moon Guard captain was captured alive and his cultivation was crippled. Zhao Feng personally brought him to Chu Wuming. In the main hall of the general's residence, the commander of the Blood Moon Guards saw Chu Wuming, who had been waiting for the entire night. He originally thought that the battle would end quickly, but who knew that it would last for the entire night? This night, Chu Wuming did not sleep and had been waiting here. At this moment, they finally saw the Blood Moon Guard commander. His body was covered in blood, and his body was riddled with wounds. His cultivation was even destroyed, and he was completely a cripple. Seeing Chu Wuming, the Blood Moon Guard commander paused for a moment, but he soon burst into laughter. Haha, so that's how it is. So that's how it is. The moment he saw Chu Wuming, the Blood Moon Guard commander instantly understood everything. From the Wei Yuan army being gradually killed, to the 4 major legions besieging the Blood Moon Guards, and now to the destruction of the Blood Moon Guards. Everything was Chu Wuming's masterpiece. Previously, he thought that the 4 major legions had rebelled, but now it seemed that it was not the case. They had joined Chu Wuming. Chu Wuming laughed out loud, but his laughter was filled with bitterness. He waved his hand and signaled Zhao Feng to leave. Soon, only Chu Wuming and the Blood Moon Guard commander were left in the main hall. One of them sat on the main seat, while the other knelt in the middle of the main hall. They looked at each other. After a long time, Chu Wuming broke the silence first. The Blood Moon Guards are indeed the strongest army in the empire. I admire you. These were Chu Wuming's heartfelt words, but the Blood Moon Guard commander smiled bitterly. So what if the Blood Moon Guards are strong? They still fell on your Highness's path to becoming the emperor. It was already clear what Chu Wuming wanted to do. Without waiting for Chu Wuming's reply, the Blood Moon Guard's commander sighed softly and said, "Don't worry." Who would have thought that the 3rd prince, who had already left the imperial capital and seemed to have no fate with the position of crown prince, would actually control the 4 major legions of the Hulao Pass. It's funny that the 1st prince and the 2nd prince are still fighting to the death in the imperial capital. Haha. Chu Wuming's actions were indeed unexpected to the Blood Moon Guard commander. Compared to Chu Wushuang and Chu Wuk, Chu Wuming's methods were more brilliant, decisive, and ruthless. Hearing the Blood Moon Guard commander's words, Chu Wuming did not refute and shook his head bitterly. I have no choice. This simple sentence fully expressed the helplessness in Chu Wuming's heart. Chu Wuming was ambitious, but Chu Wuming did not have the slightest chance of winning against his 1st brother and 2nd brother. Therefore, he could only take the risk to have the chance to turn defeat into victory. Hearing Chu Wuming's words, the Blood Moon Guard commander paused slightly. He could tell that Chu Wuming was not lying. Besieging and killing the Blood Moon Guards was also a choice that Chu Wuming had no choice. There was no other choice. The Blood Moon Guards blocked Chu Wuming's path to power, so they could only be eliminated. Taking a deep breath, the matter was already settled. The Blood Moon Guards were destroyed, and Chu Wuming had millions of troops in his hands. Now, as long as Chu Wuming gave an order, not to mention Chu Wushuang and Chu Wuk, even Chu Mu would have to retreat. A mere crown prince position was already in Chu Wuming's bag. Furthermore, Chu Wuming even had the ability to fight for the supreme emperor position and could even force Chu Mu to give up his position. Chu Wushuang and Chu Wuk were no match for Chu Wuming, and similarly, Chu Mu was no match for Chu Wuming. From today onwards, Chu Wuming would be the true master of the Moonless Empire. Even if Chu Wuk did not fight for that position, Chu Mu would definitely be a figurehead. At that time, the Crown Prince would be in charge of the Moonless Empire, and the Emperor would not have any power. Looking calmly at Chu Wuming, the Blood Moon Guard commander said indifferently, "Your Highness, there is no one who can stop you now. Before I die, may I be so bold as to ask, what do you plan to do with the first prince and second prince in the future?" Chu Wuming's ascension to power was inevitable, and no one could stop him. As such, the first prince and second prince, Chu Wushuang, would be in an awkward position as their existence would always be a threat to Chu Wuming. Hearing the Blood Moon Guard commander's words, Chu Wuming slightly exhorted before coldly spitting out a word, "Kill." Chu Wuming had already thought of how to deal with Chu Wuk and Chu Wushuang. They could only be killed, and the two of them definitely could not be allowed to live. As long as they were alive, regardless of the time, they were a potential danger to Chu Wuming. As though he had already guessed Chu Wuming's answer, the Blood Moon Guard commander did not change his expression and continued to ask, "Then, how does your Highness plan to deal with His Majesty? Still kill?" Chapter 499. The Blood Moon Guard commander was not surprised that Chu Wuming wanted to kill Chu Wuk and Chu Wushuang, the most merciless royal family. Even if the three of them were biological brothers, Chu Wuming would definitely not let them live. Therefore, after realizing that Chu Wuming's ascension to power was inevitable, the Blood Moon Guard commander had already guessed the fate of Chu Wuk and Chu Wushuang. Now, he was most concerned about how Chu Wuming intended to treat Chu Mu, the Emperor and his father. The Blood Moon Guard commander did not care about the life and death of Chu Wuk and Chu Wushuang. However, he was absolutely loyal to Chu Mu. Before his death, the Blood Moon Guard commander wanted to do one last thing for Chu Mu, and that was to persuade Chu Wushuang not to harm Chu Mu. After all, they were father and son. Hearing the Blood Moon Guard commander's words, Chu Wushuang did not reply immediately. To be honest, Chu Wushuang also did not know how to treat Chu Mu. Seeing that Chu Wushuang had fallen into silence, the Blood Moon Guard commander said nervously, "Your Highness, you and His Majesty are father and son. You," thinking that Chu Wushuang also wanted to kill Chu Mu and directly ascend to the throne, the Blood Moon Guard commander persuaded nervously. However, before he could finish his sentence, Chu Wushuang interrupted him. "Don't worry, I will not commit patricide." Previously, Chu Wuming was very hesitant about Chu Mu's matter. However, at this moment, Chu Wuming made a decision. He could kill Chu Wuk and Chu Wushuang, but not Chu Mu. No matter what, he would not commit patricide. Hearing this, the Blood Moon Guard commander secretly heaved a sigh of relief and bowed deeply to Chu Wuming. "Then, I can go with peace of mind. I hope that your Highness will not forget what you said today, and will not commit patricide in the future no matter what." After receiving Chu Wuming's promise, the Blood Moon Guard commander was already very satisfied. Although Chu Wuming knew that it would be difficult to rope in the Blood Moon Guards, he still probed. "Actually, you don't have to die. If you are willing to rely on me." Chu Wuming did not have the slightest hatred or enmity towards the Blood Moon Guard commander. On the contrary, he admired him very much. This was a rare talent, and at the same time, he was a loyal person. If he could subdue him, Chu Wuming naturally did not want to kill him. However, after hearing Chu Wuming's words, the commander of the Blood Moon Guards shook his head without hesitation and said with a smile, "Thank you for your kindness, Your Highness. However, I cannot be loyal to you." As expected, the Blood Moon Guard commander was unwilling to betray Chu Wuming even in death. After he finished speaking, without waiting for Chu Wuming's reply, the Blood Moon Guard commander bit his tongue and committed suicide. He knew that there was no way out today. If he did not submit, Chu Wuming would definitely not let him go. Therefore, Chu Wuming did not even need to do anything, and the Blood Moon Guard commander ended his own life. His entire body fell straight to the ground. Looking at the Blood Moon Guard commander's corpse, Chu Wuming sighed softly. Then, he silently stood up and left the main palace. Following the death of the Blood Moon Guard commander, the entire Blood Moon Guard was also declared dead. As such, Chu Wuming could directly force the emperor to abdicate. With the millions of troops in his hands, the support of the celestial equal sect, and the burning sky ruler, it was already enough to force Chu Mu to give in. Although the Moonless Empire's army did not only consist of the 4 great armies in Hulao Pass, with the 4 great armies in his hands, Chu Wuming's power was already unstoppable. After all, with these armies, he could completely control the emperor's capital in an instant. As long as he could control the emperor's capital, Chu Wuming could ascend to the position of crown prince. Next was the matter of planning to head to the emperor's capital. Just as Chu Wuming destroyed the Blood Moon Guards here, in the emperor's capital, the battle between Chu Wushuang and Chu Wuk could be said to be getting more and more intense. Due to Chu Wuming's departure, both Chu Wuming and Chu Wuk wanted to end this battle for the position of crown prince as soon as possible. Therefore, the emperor's capital could be said to be surging with winds and clouds, and the initiator of all this was the battle between the first prince and the second prince. The two of them crazily roped in the influential officials in the imperial court and even assassinated many of them. Seeing that the competition was getting more and more intense, Chu Mu still did not express his stance. In Chu Wuk's palace, Chu Wuk, who was wearing a purple python robe, was lying on a luxurious recliner. Behind him were 2 beautiful maids massaging him. While enjoying the service of the 2 young ladies, Chu Wuk looked at a middle-aged man in front of him and smiled. "I have received news that the commander of the Weiyuan army in Hulao Pass has mysteriously fallen. Yesterday, Father has sent the Blood Moon Guards to thoroughly investigate this matter. Do you think I should do something? Your Highness wants to." Hearing Chu Wuk's words, the middle-aged man quickly thought of something, but did not dare to say it out loud. The middle-aged man didn't finish his sentence, but Chu Wuk didn't blame him and continued with a smile. "That's right, I do want to use this opportunity to do something. My 3rd brother is currently in Hulao Pass. Although he is far away from the emperor's capital, he is still a potential threat to me. I am thinking that perhaps I can use this opportunity to eliminate my 3rd brother." He didn't know the situation in Hulao Pass at all. After all, the entire Hulao Pass was currently in Chu Wuming's hands, and the news had long been sealed. Therefore, Chu Wuk naturally couldn't guess that the commander of the Weiyuan army was killed by Chu Wuming. It was laughable that he still wanted to make a fuss about this matter to eliminate Chu Wuming. In fact, Chu Wuk's idea was very simple. He wanted to implicate Chu Wuming in this matter and frame Chu Wuming as the murderer of the Weiyuan army's commander. This way, Chu Wuming would be completely finished. With a faint smile on his face, Chu Wuk probably already had a plan in mind. Besides, not only Chu Wuk, but Chu Wushuang on the other side also had the same thought. In Chu Wushuang's imperial residence, at this moment, Chu Wushuang laughed heartily. "Haha, good opportunity. This is really a good opportunity. This way, I can eliminate Chu Wuming in one fell swoop." Compared to Chu Wushuang was obviously more unscrupulous. Chu Wushuang had no intention of hiding his intention to eliminate Chu Wuming. The 2 of them didn't know the situation in Hulao Pass at all. It was laughable that Chu Wuk and Chu Wushuang were still thinking about eliminating Chu Wuming. In their hearts, even though Chu Wuming had already left the imperial capital, he was still a threat. In other words, regardless of whether he was a threat or not, the 2 of them wouldn't let Chu Wuming go. Only when he was dead would he be truly safe. The 2 of them had no intention of letting Chu Wuming go. However, their thoughts were extremely laughable because at this moment, Chu Wuming and Xiao Chen had already made plans to head to the imperial capital. They would reach the imperial capital in a few days and seize the position of the Eastern Palace's crown prince in one fell swoop. Chapter 500. Chu Wuk and Chu Wushuang started to take action. With such a rare opportunity, the 2 of them wanted to kill Chu Wuming. Under the manipulation of the 2 behind the scenes, rumors quickly spread in the imperial city. They said that the death of the Weiyuan army's commander in Hulao Pass was caused by Chu Wuming. Chu Wuming wanted to seize military power, which was why he secretly killed the commander of the Wei Yuan army. It had to be said that these two brothers were really not simple. They actually hit the nail on the head. However, it was a pity that the two of them didn't know that the rumors they used to frame Chu Wuming were actually true. Chu Wuming really did want to seize military power, and he had already succeeded. As the rumors spread, Chu Wuming could be said to be at the heart of the storm. At the same time, under the push of Chu Wuk and Chu Wushuang, many influential officials in the imperial court also started to impeach Chu Wuming. They hoped that Chu Mu would thoroughly investigate this matter. If it was true, Chu Wuming had to be severely punished. Even the emperor who violated the law had to be punished like a commoner, let alone a prince like Chu Wuming. Moreover, if Chu Wuming really wanted to seize military power, he was already suspected of treason. This was a serious crime that could be beheaded. The imperial city was in an uproar, and the imperial court was even more so. The imperial court assembly that lasted for 2 days basically revolved around Chu Wuming's matter. The officials in Chu Wuk and Chu Wushuang's camps all pointed out that this matter should be investigated and Chu Wuming should be severely punished. Regarding this, Chu Mu didn't hesitate too much. He immediately sent out an imperial decree to summon Chu Wuming to the imperial city. It was obvious that he wanted to interrogate Chu Wuming. In Hulao Pass Jinshan City, Chu Wuming had already received Chu Mu's imperial decree yesterday. At this moment, he was sitting in the study room with Xiao Qin. Looking at Xiao Qin, Chu Wuming said helplessly with a bitter smile, "My two good brothers really didn't give me any chance to live." With a glance, he could see that everything was orchestrated by his two brothers behind the scenes. As the emperor, Chu Mu actually didn't speak up for him. Instead, he wanted to summon him back to the imperial city. He was very clear that once he returned to the imperial city, he probably wouldn't be able to come out again. Facing Chu Wuming's bitter smile, Xiao Qin smiled and said, "What does your highness plan to do?" "Of course. Since Imperial Father has already given the order, as your son, I naturally have to obey." Hearing Xiao Qin's words, Chu Wuming sneered. Previously, Chu Wuming still felt that he was a little cruel. However, now that Chu Wuk and Chu Wushuang had secretly tried to kill him, Chu Wuming wanted to kill him. In addition, Chu Mu didn't speak up for him in this matter. To Chu Wuming, this matter made him completely disappointed. At the same time, he didn't have the slightest bit of hesitation about what he was going to do in the future. After all, they wanted him dead, so why should he be merciful? They had already discussed the matter of entering the imperial city. This time, Xiao Qin and Chu Wuming only planned to bring the Jinshan army and the main generals of the 4 legions. As for the other 3 legions, they would remain in Hulao Pass. After all, Hulao Pass was an important border defense area. It had to be heavily guarded. Otherwise, if the Heavenly Wolf Empire seized the opportunity to launch an attack, they would be able to penetrate deep into the Moonless Empire's residence. This would be very troublesome. Furthermore, the Jinshan army had 500,000 people. This was enough to control the imperial city. In addition to Zhao Feng and the other main generals of the 4 legions, they were more than enough to deal with any unexpected situations. After making a decision, Chu Wuming took the lead and went to the imperial city through the teleportation array the next morning. Xiao Qin led the Jinshan army and entered the imperial city later. After Chu Wuming left, Xiao Qin, Zhao Feng, and the other generals of the 4 legions gathered in the general's mansion. They explained in detail the matters that they needed to pay attention to when they went to the imperial city. Do all the generals understand? After arriving at the imperial city, the first thing you need to do is take control of the imperial city gates and the imperial palace. At the same time, you need to control the imperial palace guards. Young master, rest assured. We will definitely not disappoint you. Hearing Xiao Qin's words, Zhao Feng and the other generals replied in unison. After making all the preparations, Xiao Qin ordered the generals to start moving. For this matter, Chu Wuming took out tens of millions of mid-grade spirit stones in order to allow the 500,000 troops to arrive at the Imperial City through the teleportation array in an instant. Everyone knew that once the teleportation array was activated, it would consume spirit stones. Moreover, any teleportation array would have a limit on the number of people it could transport at a time. Take the teleportation array in Jinshan City, for example. Because this was a border town, the teleportation array in Jinshan City was of a very high level. In the Moonless Empire, it was second only to the main teleportation array in the Imperial City. However, even so, the teleportation array in Jinshan City could only transport 10,000 people at a time. Therefore, if the 500,000 troops wanted to go to the Imperial City through the teleportation array, they would have to continuously teleport. As a result, the amount of spirit stones required was naturally huge. However, Chu Wuming had already prepared all of them. Tens of millions of spiritual senses were constantly injected into the teleportation array. At the same time, teams of well-equipped soldiers were constantly entering the teleportation array. Just as Xiao Chen was arranging for the troops to arrive at the Imperial City, Chu Wuming, who arrived at the Imperial City first, had already arrived at the Wuha Palace in the Imperial Palace. Chu Mu and the ministers of the Moonless Empire were all gathered in the Wuha Palace. Chu Wuming stood in front of the ministers with a calm expression. However, his eyes unconsciously revealed a trace of disappointment. As soon as he arrived at Wuha Palace, Chu Wuming was attacked by the officials. Words such as secretly seizing military power, plotting rebellion, and so on were endless. It was obvious that they wanted to accuse him of being a traitor and a traitor. In the face of the minister's accusations, Chu Wuming did not say a word from beginning to end. This made Chu Wuming completely disappointed. Coldly sweeping his gaze across the crowd, Chu Wuming secretly memorized the names of the ministers who shouted the loudest. In his heart, Chu Wuming had already sentenced these people to death. Enough! After a full hour, Chu Mu shouted in a deep voice, interrupting the minister's accusations. Then, he looked at Chu Wuming and asked expressionlessly, "Chu Wuming, the ministers said that you secretly seized military power and plotted to rebel. You even secretly killed the general of the Wei Yuan army. Do you admit to these things?" "Father, does it make a difference whether I admit it or not?" Hearing Chu Wuming's words, Chu Wuming indifferently replied. Since Chu Mu had already spoken, it meant that he already had an answer in his heart. As expected, Chu Wuming said indifferently, "Chu Wuming, there's no smoke without fire. From today onwards, hand over the Battle Dragon Camp and the Royal Academy's Human Island. Return to the palace and reflect in peace." Chu Mu had already made his decision. He immediately executed Chu Wuming. Although he did not order Chu Wuming to be executed, he took away all the power in Chu Wuming's hands. At the same time, he also ordered Chu Wuming to return to the palace to reflect. However, rather than calling it reflection, it was more appropriate to call it house arrest. Chapter 501. Chu Mu directly stripped Chu Wuming of all his authority, and even wanted to put him under house arrest in the palace. Hearing Chu Mu's words, the smile on Chu Wuming's face became even more helpless. At the same time, a cold intent rose from Chu Wuming's body. As expected, the ideal crown prince in his father's heart was still Chu Wuk and Chu Wushuang. If he hadn't met Xiao Chen, perhaps Chu Wuming would have already risen. But now it was clearly impossible. Helplessly laughing bitterly, Chu Wuming's eyes immediately shot out two intense rays of burning light. In his heart, he roared, "Since you won't give it to me, I'll snatch it myself." He could see that Chu Mu would not give the crown prince position to him. The crown prince of the Moonless Empire could only be chosen from Chu Wuk and Chu Wushuang. Since that was the case, Chu Wuming no longer had any reservations in his heart. Since that was the case, he would snatch it himself. Sensing the change in the aura on Chu Wuming's body, Chu Wuk's expression changed slightly. A trace of doubt flashed through his eyes. Today's matter was already set, but Chu Wuming did not have the slightest bit of fear. This was a bit strange. Like Chu Wuk, Chu Wushuang also felt the change in Chu Wuming. However, his shrewdness was clearly not as deep as Chu Wuk's, so he immediately laughed coldly. "Third brother, are you refusing to accept father's decision? Could it be that you really want to rebel?" The coldness emitted from Chu Wuming's body was extremely cold. Everyone present could feel it. Hearing Chu Wushuang's words, Chu Wuming smiled. His smile was very cold, and his tone was extremely indifferent. "I've already left the imperial capital, but you still have no intention of letting me go. My two good brothers, I think that even if I'm willing to give up today, you still won't let me go in the future, right?" He was very clear that even if he handed over all his authority, and was even placed under house arrest in the palace, Chu Wuk and Chu Wushuang would still not let him off. In the future, the two of them would definitely think of other ways to eliminate him. Hearing Chu Wuming's words, Chu Mu, who was sitting on the throne, coldly shouted, "Enough, Chu Wuming, step down." Chu Wuming's words clearly made Chu Mu hesitate. Hearing this, Chu Wuming didn't have the slightest intention of backing down. He retracted his gaze from Chu Wushuang and Chu Wuk and looked straight at Chu Wuming on the throne. At this moment, Chu Wuming calmed down and said indifferently, "Imperial Father, don't you find it strange? The Blood Moon Guards have already headed to Hulao Pass for a few days, but there is no news. Does Father not have any thoughts?" Since things had already come to this, there was naturally no need to hide anymore. Hearing Chu Wuming's words, Chu Mu was first stunned, but his expression quickly changed. At the same time, many of the ministers present and some of the more quick-witted people also quickly guessed something. An intense chill flickered in Chu Mu's eyes as he glared at Chu Wuming and shouted, "Is what Wuk and Wushuang said true? Do you really want to rebel?" Chu Wuming's words made Chu Mu realize the problem very quickly. At the same time, a terrifying guess appeared in his heart. The Blood Moon Guards had already been eliminated by Chu Wuming, and the four great armies of Hulao Pass had already submitted to Chu Wuming. At the start, everyone thought that Chu Wuk and Chu Wushuang were framing Chu Wuming. However, everyone quickly realized that perhaps it wasn't the case. Perhaps what the two of them said was true. The way they looked at Chu Wuming had completely changed. If everything was true, then the result was self-evident. Facing everyone's gazes and facing Chu Mu's questioning, Chu Wuming didn't answer. Instead, he softly muttered to himself, "It should be about time." No one knew what Chu Wuming's words meant. However, just as Chu Wuming's words left his mouth, an Imperial Guard leader covered in blood ran in. He didn't care about etiquette and loudly shouted in fear, "Your Majesty, it's bad, it's bad. The mountain-guarding army of Hulao Pass has rebelled." Hearing those words, Chu Mu, who was sitting on the throne, only felt an explosion. It was as if a clap of thunder had exploded in his brain. His entire person was instantly stunned. "It's really rebelling." He stared blankly at Chu Wuming below. Chu Mu didn't expect that Chu Wuming would actually dare to rebel. Not only Chu Mu, but Chu Wuk and Chu Wushuang were also in disbelief. The two of them originally wanted to frame Chu Wuming, but who knew that they were right? Chu Wuming had really rebelled. Everyone in Wuha Palace stared at Chu Wuming in disbelief. After a long while, Chu Mu angrily shouted, "Unfilial son, you actually dare to rebel." "You," Chu Mu angrily shouted. Perhaps it was due to his anger, but before he could finish his sentence, he vomited a mouthful of blood. Upon seeing this, many of the advanced mastery stage experts anxiously shouted, "Your Majesty, the development of the situation exceeded everyone's expectations." Chu Mu held his chest with one hand and casually waved his other hand to indicate that he was fine. Then, he took a deep breath and looked at the Imperial Guard leader. "What's the situation at the border?" Facing Chu Mu's question, the Imperial Guard leader replied with a solemn expression. 2 hours ago, the mountain suppression army suddenly entered the imperial capital through the teleportation formation. Then, they took over the main roads and city gates in a flash. Right now, the entire imperial capital is under the mountain suppression army's control. Only the imperial palace is still defending. However, because we weren't prepared, we were caught off guard by the mountain suppression army. Now, the imperial palace is about to fall. Everything happened in the blink of an eye. Only 2 hours had passed since the mountain-subduing army arrived at the imperial capital. In these 2 hours, the defenseless imperial capital was taken down by the mountain-subduing army almost instantly. It couldn't be helped. The Mountain Guard army had been prepared since the beginning, and they were planning against the enemy. Coupled with the fact that there were over 100 generals of the 4 armies, 4 Tao Emperor Realm experts, and the assistance of the experts of Heavenly Stellar residents amongst the 500,000-strong Mountain Guard army. So, the garrison of the imperial capital was utterly unable to resist them. Right now, the entire imperial capital was under the mountain suppression army's control. Only the imperial guards in the imperial palace were still resisting with all their might. However, it was clear that they wouldn't be able to hold on for much longer. Hearing the commander's words, Chu Mu's face turned ashen. As the emperor, he naturally wasn't stupid. He already knew that there was no turning back. He looked at Chu Wuming as if he wanted to see through him. Chu Mu didn't expect that the third prince, who was looked down upon, would be able to do all this. Compared to Chu Mu's calmness, Chu Wuk and Chu Wushuang were completely panicking. They knew that once Chu Wuming succeeded in seizing power, the first to die would be them. Just like how they wanted to kill Chu Wuming wouldn't let them live either. Chapter 502. Chu Wuk and Chu Wushuang looked at Chu Wuming in horror. Who would have thought that Chu Wuming would really rebel? Faced with the gazes of the two brothers, Chu Wuming only indifferently glanced at them. Soon after, his gaze landed on Chu Mu as he calmly spoke. "Father, I have no choice but to do this. Furthermore, I feel that I am the most suitable candidate for the position of Crown Prince. Eldest brother is ruthless while second brother is irritable and tyrannical. If the two of them take the position of Crown Prince, it will only harm the empire." Now that things had developed to this point, there was no longer a need to hide anything anymore. Therefore, Chu Wuming also revealed the last layer of the window paper. His meaning was already very clear. The position of the Crown Prince could only be taken by him, Chu Wuming. Hearing this, Chu Mu revealed a bitter smile. "Do you still have me, your father, in your heart?" "Of course. I am the son of father. Blood is thicker than water. Naturally, I have father in my heart," Chu Wuming replied calmly. "Haha, good. What a good blood is thicker than water. Tell me, are the Blood Moon Guards still around?" Chu Mu asked with a clear laugh. Although he had already guessed what happened to the Blood Moon Guards, Chu Mu still wanted Chu Wuming to tell him personally. Perhaps Chu Wuming did not kill them and only lock them up? He still had a last strand of hope for the Blood Moon Guards. However, this last strand of hope was instantly shattered along with Chu Wuming's reply. "Father, the Blood Moon Guards betrayed the Empire and were all killed by me. Due to the urgency of the situation, I did not have the time to ask for instructions from Father. I hope Father can punish me. It's over." The Blood Moon Guards were completely annihilated. Hearing Chu Wuming's words, Chu Mu's face turned even paler. He smiled weakly. "Good. Betraying the Empire. Good job, my son." Now that the mountain-suppressing army had surrounded the imperial capital and the Blood Moon Guards were all annihilated, Chu Mu could be said to have no power left to stop Chu Wuming. Following Chu Mu's words, Shao Chen, the 4 elders of the Celestial Equal Sect, Zhao Feng, and the other generals of the 4 armies, as well as thousands of soldiers from the mountain-suppressing army charged into the martial palace. Without saying anything, these soldiers immediately took control of all the officials and generals present. Facing these soldiers from the mountain-suppressing army, Although the cultivation of the officials and generals was higher, no one resisted. This was not strange. Now that the situation was over, resistance was futile. At the same time, Zhao Feng and the others personally sealed the cultivation of Chu Wuk and Chu Wushuang. Facing Zhao Feng and the others, the 4 generals of the Crown Prince's palace. Do you know what you're doing? I'm the second prince. If you dare to treat me like this, I'll definitely exterminate your entire family in the future. Compared to Chu Wuming's anger, Chu Wuk was strangely calm. He allowed Zhao Feng and the others to seal his cultivation. He knew very well that he no longer had a future. Now that Chu Wuming was about to take control, the two of them did not have much time left. After successfully taking control of the martial palace, Zhao Feng and the other generals immediately knelt down in front of Chu Wuming and shouted, "Greetings, Your Highness the Crown Prince." Chu Mu had yet to give a decree, but the generals were already calling Chu Wuming the Crown Prince. Chu Wuming did not reject this and said calmly, "Generals, rise." "Thank you, Your Highness the Crown Prince." Since the martial palace was controlled, so was the entire imperial palace. It was at this moment that Chu Qingshan, Chu Mu Bai, the Burning Sky ruler, and the other 2 emperors of the Moonless Empire appeared. His gaze swept over everyone present. Then, Chu Qingshan's gaze landed on Tian Guochuan and the other 3 elders of the Celestial Equal Sect. He said with a bitter smile, "Elder Tian, I didn't think that the Celestial Equal Sect would interfere. We haven't seen each other in 50 years, right?" 58 years, Tian Guochuan nodded and replied. "Yeah, it's been 58 years. Time really flies." Hearing Tian Guochuan's reply, Chu Qingshan sighed and then looked at Chu Wuming. "Nameless, can you follow me to the back garden for a walk? You and I haven't spoken in a long time." Chu Qingshan invited Chu Wuming. Hearing this, Chu Wuming nodded and didn't refuse. Xiao Chen didn't stop this because Chu Qingshan wouldn't harm Chu Wuming. Today's matter was an internal affair of the imperial palace. Chu Wuming could be said to be Chu Qingshan's descendant. Therefore, to Chu Qingshan, since Chu Wuming had gained power, he wouldn't stop him. As long as the throne was still in the hands of the Chu family, Chu Qingshan and Chu Mu Bai, the 2 emperors, could accept it. Chu Qingshan and Chu Wuming slowly walked out of the martial palace. As for Chu Mu Bai, he stayed behind. His goal was clear: to protect Chu Mu. Walking in the imperial palace, Chu Qingshan calmly said, "Nameless, how do you plan on treating Wuk and Wushuang, your 2 brothers?" He didn't oppose Chu Wuming being in power, because Chu Wuming was also a member of the Chu family. Moreover, no matter who was in power, it didn't affect Chu Qingshan and Chu Mu Bai, the 2 retired emperors. This was because they were already outside of imperial authority. Therefore, in Chu Qingshan's opinion, what he cared about the most right now was how Chu Wuming planned to deal with Chu Wuk and Chu Wushuang. "Ancestor wants me to let them go?" Hearing Chu Qingshan's words, Chu Wuming didn't answer and instead asked a question. Towards this, Chu Qingshan didn't do anything. He nodded honestly and said, "After all, the 3 of you are blood brothers. If possible, let them go." They were all members of the Chu family and were all his descendant. Therefore, he didn't want Chu Wuming and his brothers to kill each other. Hearing Chu Qingshan's words, Chu Wuming was silent for a moment before speaking. "Ancestor, do you think that if I let the 2 of them go, they will be deeply grateful to me? No, they will only secretly develop their power and try to take back power from me. Therefore, does Ancestor think that the Moonless Empire can still be stable? Ancestor, I am a member of the Chu family and a descendant of the imperial family. My wish is for the Moonless Empire to become strong until one day, the Moonless Empire can dominate Danyang County. Therefore, no matter if it's for public or private reasons, I cannot let the 2 of them live. Chu Wuk and Chu Wushuang must die." "Then what about your father? Will he be killed as well?" Chu Qingshan continued to ask. "I won't kill my father. Instead, I will let my father enjoy his remaining years. Chu Wuming replied. He wouldn't kill Chu Mu, but the power in Chu Mu's hands must be handed over. After that, Chu Wuming would let Chu Mu enjoy his remaining years in the imperial palace and peacefully live out the rest of his life. Hearing Chu Wuming's words, Chu Qingshan lightly sighed and indifferently said, Fine, we'll do as you say. However, I have a condition. Your father's throne can't be touched by you for 50 years. However, you can control the power and govern the empire as the crown prince. After 50 years, I will have your father give up the throne to you. Chapter 503. In the end, Chu Qingshan chose to compromise. However, he raised a condition. Within 50 years, Chu Wuming couldn't touch Chu Mu's throne. He could seize power and manage the empire as the crown prince, but he couldn't remove Chu Mu's position. Faced with Chu Qingshan's condition, Chu Wuming pondered for a moment before nodding in agreement. Chu Wuming's condition didn't mean much to him. As long as he could control power, it didn't matter if he ascended to the capital or not. Seeing Chu Wuming nod, Chu Qingshan didn't say anything else. Today's events happened too suddenly. Chu Qingshan couldn't stop anything. Moreover, if Chu Qingshan insisted on stopping it, the Moonless Empire would probably fall into chaos. An hour later, Chu Wuming and Chu Qingshan returned to Wuha Palace. Chu Qingshan personally gave the order to confer Chu Wuming as the Moonless Empire's crown prince. Following Chu Qingshan's words, the faces of all the nobles in Wuha Palace changed. They all knew that from today onwards, the Moonless Empire's sky would probably change. Chu Wuk and Chu Wushuang were completely finished. At the same time, Chu Mu would probably only be an emperor in name. After all, from Chu Wuming's actions today, he definitely wouldn't return all of his power to Chu Mu. Moreover, it wouldn't be long before the Moonless Empire would be swept up in a bloody storm. Especially those families and nobles that relied on Chu Wuk and Chu Wushuang. Their fates probably wouldn't be any better. After announcing Chu Wuming as the crown prince, Chu Qingshan looked at Tian Guochuan and the other 4 Tianqi sect elders and said, Elder Tian, do you want to come to my place for a drink? Haha, Brother Chu's invitation is only natural. Let's go. Hearing this, Tian Guochuan laughed. Immediately after, Chu Qingshan, Chu Mu Bai, Tian Guochuan and the others left. Chu Mu also left Wuha Palace under the accompaniment of several people from the temple, returning to the harem. The following matters would naturally be decided by Chu Wuming. If Chu Mu continued to stay here, he would only be asking for trouble. Everyone left one after another. At the same time, Xiao Chen also bid farewell to Chu Wuming and left the Wuha Palace. Now that the imperial capital had basically stabilized, Xiao Chen wasn't too interested in the upcoming purge of the imperial court. Moreover, this was originally Chu Wuming's matter. Now, Xiao Chen still had to bring Bai Ruyue back to the imperial capital to settle down. Chu Wuming's gaze swept over everyone present. Then, names were called out one by one. These names were all Chu Wuk and Chu Wushuang's people. Towards these people, Chu Wuming naturally wouldn't have the slightest bit of mercy. He directly ordered them to be locked up in the celestial prison. Everything happened so unexpectedly. Nearly half of the imperial court officials were locked up. As for the others, Chu Wuming allowed them to return, but they weren't allowed to leave the imperial capital. After resolving the problem of the imperial court officials, the next step was Chu Wuk and Chu Wushuang. Chu Wuming naturally had to take care of the two of them. He ordered them to be locked up separately, with the mountain-subduing army personally guarding them. In the next few days, as expected, the entire imperial capital, and even the entire Moonless Empire, was swept up in a storm of blood. In just a short 7 days, the forces of Chu Wuk and Chu Wushuang were uprooted. Those who were loyal to the two of them, without exception, were all killed. For a time, the Moonless Empire could be said to have undergone a drastic change. In this matter, Chu Wuming displayed his decisive side. He eliminated all potential dangers. At the same time, The authority of the entire Moonless Empire was firmly controlled by Chu Wuming. Although it wasn't stable yet, it couldn't cause any big waves. For 7 consecutive days, Chu Wuming could be said to have been extremely busy. As for Xiao Qin, he stayed in the heavenly stellar residence. He cultivated while accompanying his mother, Bai Ruyue. He didn't care about the matters of the outside world at all. After stabilizing the situation in the Moonless Empire, Chu Wuming promoted a group of people who were finally loyal to him. Especially those important positions, Chu Wuming changed them all to his own trusted subordinate. After doing all this, Chu Wuming finally arrived at Chu Wuk and Chu Wushuang's prison in the middle of the night. The two of them were locked up alone. Moreover, they weren't in the celestial prison. Instead, they were in the backyard of the imperial palace. A small courtyard was specially set aside for the two of them to live in. However, the surroundings of the courtyard were filled with soldiers of the mountain-suppressing army. Striding into the courtyard, the 3 brothers met again. However, Chu Wuming was wearing a purplish-gold dragon robe, while Chu Wushuang and Chu Wuk were wearing prison clothes. At the same time, their cultivations were sealed, and they appeared extremely haggard. Sitting on a stone bench in the courtyard, Chu Wuming looked at the two of them and said indifferently, "This might be the last time we meet." "What did you say? Chu Wuming, you want to kill us? Father won't let you off if you do this." Chu Wuming's voice was very calm, but the meaning was very clear. Hearing this, Chu Wushuang immediately shouted angrily. As he cursed, he wanted to charge forward. However, just as Chu Wushuang moved, Zhao Feng, who was behind Chu Wuming, kicked Chu Wushuang far away. Compared to Chu Wushuang's rage, Chu Wuming was very calm. He looked at the stone bench beside Chu Wuming and said calmly, "Can I sit? Big brother, please." Sitting down, Chu Wuk looked at Chu Wuming, who was wearing a dragon robe, and a bitter smile appeared on his face. Then, he said slowly, "I never took you seriously. I've never taken you seriously. But who would have thought that while my second brother and I were fighting to the death, you had already gained control of millions of soldiers. I know your purpose for coming here tonight and I don't expect you to let me go. After all, if I were you today, I would have done the same. But, my second brother's mother and I." Xian's eyes widened. His heart was filled with hatred. Chu Wuk said. He didn't expect Chu Wuming to let him off, but he hoped that Chu Wuming would let their mother go. They were both Chu Mu's concubines when they were young. Hearing Chu Wuming's words, Chu Wuming took a deep breath. A complicated look flashed through his eyes, and he said, "Since ancient times, the path of emperors' corpses has been the most merciless. Big brother, there are many things that I don't have a choice in." Hearing Chu Wuming's words, Chu Wuk fell silent. He already knew what Chu Wuming meant. It was impossible. Anyone related to Chu Wuming and Chu Wushuang must die. Many people thought that emperors were supreme, but who knew that there were many things that emperors didn't have a choice in? Chu Wuming slowly stood up. He had said enough. He took out 2 pots of poisoned wine from his storage ring and slowly placed them on the stone table. Then, he took a deep breath and said, "This is the only thing that I can do to let big brother and second brother have some dignity." After speaking, Chu Wuming left with Zhao Feng, leaving behind the 2 pots of fragrant poisoned wine, the silent Chu Wushuang, and the crying Chu Wuming. Chapter 504. Chu Wuming left. Just as he walked out of the courtyard, Chu Wuk's laughter came from within. "Ha ha ha, third brother, big brother will leave first. Ha." Just as Chu Wuming said, he gave the two of them the most dignified way to die. Chu Wuk knew that he didn't have a second choice. Hearing Chu Wuming's laughter outside the courtyard, 2 streams of tears flowed down from his eyes. Boil beans to make soup, soak beans to make juice. Soak beans in the pot, sob beans in the pot. They were born from the same roots, why should they kill each other so quickly? Although the 3 brothers had always been fighting to the death for the position of crown prince, and wanted to completely eliminate each other, until now, when the dust had settled, Chu Wuming's heart was still uncontrollably touched when facing his brother's death. No matter what happened in the past, no matter what grudges they had, the three of them were still brothers. Chu Wuck's words kept ringing in Chu Wuming's ears. Chu Wuming raised his head to look at the horizon, trying his best not to let himself cry out loud. Chu Wuming murmured softly, "If it weren't for the fact that I was born in the imperial family, why would I be so heartless? But what can I do?" As soon as he finished speaking, Chu Wuming left in loneliness. At the same time, in the courtyard, Chu Wuck raised a pot of poisoned wine and drank it all in one gulp. He then spat out a mouthful of blood and died on the spot. Seeing Chu Wuck leave first, Chu Wushuang, who was at the side, walked over to Chu Wuck's corpse as if she had lost her soul. Hugging Chu Wuck's corpse, Chu Wushuang was expressionless. After that, she lifted the other pot of poisoned wine and drank it in one gulp. Chu Wuming had already returned to his Crown Prince Eastern Palace, which had now become his temporary residence. At this moment, Chu Wuming was drinking alone in the courtyard. Zhao Feng quickly walked over and bowed respectfully to Chu Wuming. "Your Highness, the first prince and second prince." He originally wanted to tell Chu Wuming that Chu Wuck and Chu Wushuang had already died, but before Zhao Feng could finish, Chu Wuming waved his hand helplessly and interrupted him. "I know. First Prince Chu Wushuang will be named King Nanyang and second Prince Chu Wushuang will be named King Beiha. They will be buried in the imperial tombs." "Understood," Zhao Feng respectfully replied after hearing Chu Wuming's words. "That's right, go invite brother Xiao Chen over," Chu Wuming said. After personally killing his two brothers, Chu Wuming was extremely annoyed and wanted to drink. At this moment, the only person who could drink with Chu Wuming was Xiao Chen. Xiao Chen, who had received Chu Wuming's invitation, soon arrived at the Crown Prince Eastern Palace. Ever since Chu Wuming came to power, although Xiao Chen hadn't received any rewards, everyone knew that Chu Wuming still treated Xiao Chen as a friend and brother. Even though Chu Wuming was in power, he was still wary of Xiao Chen. This was because Chu Wuming knew that with Xiao Chen's talent and strength, a measly moonless empire was nothing in his eyes. Xiao Chen's world was the vast world outside the Pill Sun County. In the entire moonless empire, only Xiao Chen could enter and leave the imperial palace as he pleased. They soon arrived at the Crown Prince Eastern Palace. Seeing Xiao Chen, Chu Wuming revealed a forced smile and personally pulled Xiao Chen's hand to the pavilion in the courtyard. In the pavilion, Wu Yun also bowed respectfully when she saw Xiao Chen. "Young Master Xiao Chen." Now that Chu Wuming was already the Crown Prince, Wu Yun naturally became the Crown Princess. Her status could be said to be unattainable. At the same time, the Wu clan also became the most popular clan in the entire Moonless Empire from a small clan. However, even so, Wu Yun still didn't dare to be impudent in front of Xiao Chen. She was a smart woman and knew that the reason why Chu Wuming could be where he was today was all because of Xiao Chen. Otherwise, Chu Wuming's fate would have been Chu Wuck and Chu Wushuang today. He nodded slightly at Wu Yun and then walked to the table with Chu Wuming. The two of them sat opposite each other and Wu Yun personally poured wine for them. Xiao Chen had already guessed why Chu Wuming called him over. Knowing that Chu Wuming was depressed, Xiao Chen didn't say anything and drank with Chu Wuming. After 3 rounds of drinking, perhaps because of his mood, Chu Wuming didn't use his spiritual energy to dissolve the alcohol in his body. Thus, at this moment, Chu Wuming was already a little tipsy. His eyes were blurred as he looked at Xiao Chen and spoke incoherently. "Brother Xiao, do you think I'm too cold-blooded? How could you kill your own brother?" Chu Wuming didn't feel good about personally executing 2 of his brothers. Upon hearing his words, Xiao Chen said indifferently, "Do you regret it, Your Highness?" "Regret it?" Upon hearing Xiao Chen's words, Chu Wuming asked himself this question. After pondering for a moment, Chu Wuming shook his head and replied, "I don't regret it. I didn't choose. I didn't choose. You don't regret your decision." Upon hearing his words, Xiao Chen continued, "Since you don't regret it, "Why do you have to do this, Your Majesty? As a king, there are many things that you don't want to do, but you have to do them. This is the helplessness of a king." Xiao Chen didn't know how to console Chu Wuming because he hadn't experienced this before. That night, Xiao Chen and Chu Wuming drank the entire night in the Crown Prince's eastern palace. Crown Prince Chu Wuming was completely drunk and bawling his eyes out. He didn't seem like a crown prince at all. Originally, he thought that he could mercilessly kill Chu Wuming and Chu Wuming who wanted to kill him. However, when it was time to actually take action, Chu Wuming realized that his heart actually hurt so much. No matter how much he hated Chu Wuk and Chu Wuyue, the kinship of blood was thicker than water. It was easy to say that he wanted to kill his own brothers. However, if he really wanted to do it, that feeling was heart-wrenching. In the end, Chu Wuming was supported back to his bedroom by Wu Yun, while Xiao Chen returned to the heavenly stellar residence alone. Perhaps he was infected by Chu Wuming. On the way back, Xiao Chen inexplicably imagined that if he were to encounter such a situation, would he end up like Chu Wuming? After all, the Xiao clan was also a large clan. It wasn't hard to imagine that if they successfully returned to the heavenly stellar continent in the future, the Xiao clan would become one of the top clans even if it wasn't the largest clan in the heavenly stellar continent. In that case, would the Xiao clan end up like the Wuyu Empire today? In order to fight for the position of patriarch, would the Xiao clan's disciples kill each other? Without an answer, Xiao Chen didn't know if the Xiao clan would end up like that. With his imagination running wild, Xiao Chen returned to the heavenly stellar residence. Now that the matter of the Wuyu Empire had been settled, the only thing left was to destroy the Heavenly Wolf Empire. With the first ray of sunlight in the morning, Xiao Chen, who was standing in the courtyard, looked in the direction of the Heavenly Wolf Empire and softly muttered to himself, "Blood Wolf King, I said that I would definitely cut off your head with my own hands." Chapter 505. Now that the matter of the Moonless Empire had been settled, Chu Wuming had successfully ascended to the position of Crown Prince and held great power. The current Moonless Empire had indeed presented a rather strange image. That was, the Emperor had no real power in his hands, while the Crown Prince held great power in his hands. The military and politics of the Empire were all firmly controlled by Chu Wuming. As for Chu Mu, he was more like a symbol of the Moonless Empire. He didn't have the slightest bit of authority, and was just like the mascot of the Moonless Empire. However, Chu Wuming did not break his promise to Chu Mu. Other than not giving him any power, he still provided him with good food and drinks, allowing him to live out his remaining years in the palace. Originally, the situation of the Moonless Empire had just stabilized, so it was not the best time to attack the Heavenly Wolf Empire. However, Xiao Chen did not have much time left, so the destruction of the Heavenly Wolf Empire was imperative. Xiao Chen gave Chu Wuming a few days' time. After he had successfully walked out of the matter with Chu Wuk and Chu Wushuang, Xiao Chen sought him out to discuss the matter of attacking the Heavenly Wolf Empire. Chu Wuming now knew that it was not the best time to attack the Heavenly Wolf Empire. However, since Xiao Chen had said so, Chu Wuming did not refuse. In front of Xiao Chen, Chu Wuming did not have the dignity of a crown prince. It could be said that he listened to everything Xiao Chen said. Soon, they decided on the plan to attack the Heavenly Wolf Empire. This time, the Moonless Empire wanted to destroy the Heavenly Wolf Empire in one fell swoop. Therefore, this war could be said to be a war between the two empires. Before the war began, the first problem to be dealt with was the Gale Empire. Since they wanted to start an all-out war with the Heavenly Wolf Empire, the Moonless Empire had to concentrate their forces at Hulao Pass. In this way, their defense against the Gale Empire would naturally be much weaker. Therefore, in order to guard against the Gale Empire's sneak attack, the Moonless Empire naturally had to send people to the Gale Empire to discuss. As for who to send, Xiao Chen had already thought about it. Zhang Qi and an elder of the Tianqi sect were the most suitable. First of all, the elder of the Celestial Equal Sect represented the Celestial Equal Sect. This could make the Gale Empire wary to a certain extent. After all, the Celestial Equal Sect was also involved in this matter. When the Gale Empire took action, they had no choice but to consider the Celestial Equal Sect. After confirming the candidates, Xiao Chen ordered the two of them to set off on the same day. This time, in order to persuade the Gale Empire, Xiao Chen and Chu Wuming discussed and decided to give 1/3 of the Heavenly Wolf Empire's territory to the Gale Empire. In other words, the Gale Empire didn't need to participate in this war, but they couldn't sneak attack the Moonless Empire. After the war, if the Moonless Empire won, the Gale Empire would get 1/3 of the Sky Wolf Empire's territory. Such a condition could be said to be extremely generous. As long as the Gale Empire was not stupid, they would definitely not refuse. In this way, the Moonless Empire would be able to deal with the war with the Heavenly Wolf Empire with all their strength. Zhang Qi and the elder of the Celestial Equal Sect left for the Gale Empire on the same day through the teleportation formation. With the teleportation formation, the two of them could return within a few days. At the same time that the two of them left for the Gale Empire, Chu Wuming also began to mobilize the army. He mobilized nearly 90% of the Moonless Empire's forces to Hulao Pass, leaving less than 1,000,000 troops at the border with the Gale Empire. In order to complete the mobilization of the army in a short period of time, Chu Wuming could be said to have spared no expense and used all the spirit stones in the treasury. Faced with Chu Wuming's actions, some of the Moonless Empire's ministers supported it, while others strongly opposed it. Even Chu Qingshan and Chu Mubai had no choice but to step in. After all, Chu Wuming's actions clearly indicated that he wanted to fight to the death with the Heavenly Wolf Empire. Once the war started, they would either win, or the Moonless Empire's strength would be greatly reduced, or even be destroyed. Within Wuha Palace, on this day, the Moonless Empire's civil and military officials, as well as Chu Qingshan and Chu Mubai, gathered together. Chu Wuming sat below the throne. Faced with Chu Wuming, many of the ministers expressed their opinions. Your Highness, this war is not feasible. Right now, our Moonless Empire has just stabilized. If we rashly start a war with the Heavenly Wolf Empire, it will be too dangerous. That's right, Your Highness. The Heavenly Wolf Empire's strength is not inferior to our Moonless Empire. If we start an all-out war, the outcome will be hard to predict. I hope Your Highness will reconsider. I implore Your Highness to reconsider. This war was truly too important, so many of the ministers tried their best to persuade Chu Wuming to reconsider. However, faced with the dissuasion of many ministers, Chu Wuming spoke neither hurriedly nor slowly in a deep voice. Everyone, there's no need to say more. I've already made up my mind. Moreover, our Moonless Empire will definitely be loud in this war. When the time comes, our Moonless Empire will become the strongest empire in Danyang County. Chu Wuming was full of confidence. Hearing this, many of the large achievements looked at each other. They did not know what Chu Wuming was planning. Even Chu Qingshan asked curiously. Nameless, what plan do you have? Can you just say it? Chu Qingshan needed an explanation from Chu Wuming. After all, this was a war that concerned the survival of the Moonless Empire. Chu Wuming naturally could not refuse. After all, Chu Qingshan was the retired emperor. His status was above that of the crown prince. After letting the ministers leave, when only Chu Wuming, Chu Qingshan, and Chu Mubai remained in Wuha Palace, Chu Wuming slowly spoke. Ancestor, your grandson indeed has absolute confidence in winning this war. Oh, tell me in detail. Hearing this, Chu Qingshan said. Because in this attack on the Heavenly Wolf Empire, Tiger Leopard Ridge will do their best to help. With our Moonless Empire, Tiger Leopard Ridge, and Tianqi Sect, how can the Heavenly Wolf Empire not be destroyed? Without hiding anything, he told Chu Qingshan the truth. The reason why Chu Wuming had absolute confidence in winning this war was because of Tiger Leopard Ridge. In Wuha Palace, Chu Wuming spent a total of 4 hours before he finally managed to convince Chu Qingshan. If even Chu Qingshan agreed to it this time around, then no one would be able to stop this battle. At the same time, Chu Qingshan and Chu Mubai naturally would not just watch from the sidelines. At the same time, the Burning Sky ruler would also take action. The Moonless Empire's army continuously gathered at Hulao Pass. Such a large movement was naturally received by the Heavenly Wolf Empire. At this moment, in the Heavenly Wolf Empire's palace, the Heavenly Wolf Emperor looked at the ministers below and said in a low voice, "All of you, what do you think the Moonless Empire wants? Could it be that they truly want to start an all-out war with our Heavenly Wolf Empire? Reporting to your Majesty, the Moonless Empire's situation has just stabilized. Logically speaking, they should not start a war at this time." Hearing the Heavenly Wolf Emperor's question, a minister respectfully replied, "Since that is the case, why is the Moonless Empire's army continuously gathering at Hulao Pass? Is this not a sign of a war breaking out?" The Heavenly Wolf Emperor coldly said. Chapter 506. No one thought that the Moonless Empire would start a war at this time, but judging from the current situation, the Moonless Empire was indeed preparing for an all-out war. The civil and military officials of the Heavenly Wolf Empire were a little confused by Chu Wuming's actions. But just in case, the Emperor of the Heavenly Wolf Empire ordered the army of the Heavenly Wolf Empire to gather at the Hulao Pass to prevent the Moonless Empire from starting a war. Although the current situation of the Moonless Empire wasn't suitable to start a war, it was still better to be careful. After 2 hours of court assembly, the Blood Wolf King and the other courtiers of the Heavenly Wolf Empire left the palace together. Sitting in the carriage, the Blood Wolf King's expression didn't look too good. At the same time, a thought kept lingering in his mind. If the demonic beasts of the Tiger Leopard Ridge are involved, then the Moonless Empire might really start a war. He had been thinking about this problem for a long time. After all, the Blood Wolf King clearly saw the Tiger Emperor personally escorting Shao Chen and the others back to the Moonless Empire. To be able to do this, it was obvious that the Tiger Emperor and Shao Chen had reached some kind of agreement. Moreover, Shao Chen must have something that the Tiger Emperor couldn't refuse. In this case, if Shao Chen went to the Tiger Leopard Ridge to persuade the Tiger Emperor, then the demonic beasts of the Tiger Leopard Ridge might really intervene. However, on second thought, the Blood Wolf King felt that it was impossible. After all, the Tiger Leopard Ridge had existed for so many years. If they were willing to help humans, why would they wait until now? Moreover, humans and demonic beasts were enemies, so why would they join hands? Even if Shao Chen had something that the Tiger Emperor needed, he must have used it the last time. He thought that Shao Chen had already used up his bargaining chip when the Tiger Emperor saved him last time. However, the Blood Wolf King definitely wouldn't have thought that the Tiger Emperor didn't obtain anything last time and only received a promise from Shao Chen. Just because of a promise, the Tiger Emperor personally escorted Shao Chen back to the Moonless Empire. This was something that the Blood Wolf King didn't expect. That was because he understood the Tiger Emperor's personality all too well. This was definitely a master who wouldn't act unless he saw a rabbit. If you wanted him to help you without any benefits, that was definitely a pipe dream. He did not think that Shao Chen had any bargaining chips that could make the Tiger Emperor take action. At the same time, it was impossible for monsters to form an alliance with humans. Combining these two reasons, the Blood Wolf King gradually calmed down. He felt that he had made a big fuss over nothing. After returning to the king's palace, Blood Wolf King was in a bad mood because of Shao Chen. That brat had snatched away the beauty that was already in his hands. Until now, Blood Wolf King still couldn't let go of Bai Ryu's matter. Blood Wolf King was indeed infatuated with Bai Ryu. In the mansion, the Blood Wolf King looked in the direction of the Moonless Empire and said coldly, "Shao Chen, you better not fall into my hands. Otherwise, I will make you beg for death." Blood Wolf King said with overflowing killing intent. Unbeknownst to him, in the imperial capital of the Moonless Empire, Xiao Chen also looked at the horizon and said with overflowing killing intent in his eyes, "Blood Wolf King, I will soon be able to chop off your head with my own hands." Blood Wolf King wanted to kill Xiao Chen. At the same time, Xiao Chen also wanted to kill Blood Wolf King. If he didn't kill Blood Wolf King, Xiao Chen wouldn't feel at ease. Blood Wolf King actually dared to have designs on his mother. The two empires made their moves one after another. For a moment, the atmosphere in Hulao Pass became tense. Tens of millions of troops were constantly gathering here. At the same time, more troops would arrive. At the same time, all kinds of strategic resources, such as pills and talismans, were constantly being transported to the front line of Hulao Pass. While both sides were preparing, Zhang Qi and the Elder from the Celestial Equal Sect successfully met the Emperor of the Gale Empire in the imperial capital of the Gale Empire. "You want my Gale Empire to not take action?" Zhang Qi told the Emperor of the Gale Empire that the Moonless Empire was about to launch a large-scale attack on the Heavenly Wolf Empire. At the same time, Zhang Qi clearly expressed that Xiao Chen hoped that the Gale Empire wouldn't take the opportunity to launch a sneak attack on the Moonless Empire. Hearing this, the Emperor of the Gale Empire smiled and said, "What benefits do I get by doing this?" After the war, the Gale Empire can get 1/3 of the Heavenly Wolf Empire's territory, Zhang Qi said. "Oh? Interesting, but is the Moonless Empire so confident that they can win?" "This isn't something that the Gale Empire should consider. After all, the Gale Empire doesn't need to do anything in this war. As long as they don't move, they will have the opportunity to get 1/3 of the Heavenly Wolf Empire's territory. Moreover, if the Moonless Empire is defeated, the Gale Empire won't suffer any losses, right?" This was a completely empty deal. Without mobilizing a single soldier, the Gale Empire would have the opportunity to get 1/3 of the Heavenly Wolf Empire's territory. Regardless of the result, the Gale Empire wouldn't suffer any losses. Xiao Chen only had one request for the Gale Empire, and that was to not stab them in the back. After all, 90% of the Moonless Empire's army had been transferred to Hulao Pass. The defense against the Gale Empire could be said to exist in name only. If the Gale Empire launched an attack at this time, the Moonless Empire wouldn't be able to withstand it. Hearing Zhang Qi's words, the Emperor looked at the Celestial Equal Sect's Elder. Since the Celestial Equal Sect's Elder had appeared here, it clearly proved that the Celestial Equal Sect was also involved in this matter. Just as Xiao Chen thought, the appearance of the Celestial Equal Sect's Elder made the Emperor of the Gale Empire somewhat fearful. The Emperor of the Gale Empire didn't immediately agree to Zhang Qi's request. Instead, he had the two rest in the imperial capital. In response, Zhang Qi said, "I hope your Majesty can give us an answer as soon as possible. The situation of the war is constantly changing. We don't have much time." "Don't worry, I'll definitely give you an answer within 3 days." "That's good. Then we'll wait for your Majesty's answer in the imperial capital," said Zhang Qi. The Emperor of the Gale Empire personally arranged accommodations for Zhang Qi and Zhang Qi. The next day, the Emperor of the Gale Empire asked for the opinions of his ministers at the imperial court meeting. Actually, this matter wasn't very difficult to choose because there were only benefits and no disadvantages. They didn't need to exert themselves and there were benefits to be gained. Only an idiot would refuse such a thing. Therefore, the Emperor of the Gale Empire didn't even wait 3 days. The Emperor of the Gale Empire gave an answer the next day. The Gale Empire agreed to the Moonless Empire's request. During the period of time when the Moonless Empire and the Heavenly Wolf Empire were at war, the Gale Empire wouldn't invade the Moonless Empire in the slightest. After receiving the Gale Empire's reply, Zhang Qi and Zhang Qi immediately returned to the Moonless Empire to report. The matter progressed very smoothly. Of course, all of this was within Xiao Chen's expectations. They didn't need to worry too much about the rear anymore. With the Gale Empire's guarantee, the Moonless Empire could fully focus on the war with the Heavenly Wolf Empire. Several days later, Zhang Qi and Zhang Qi returned to the imperial capital. After receiving the news, Xiao Chen said with a faint smile, "Looks like it's about time for me to head to the Tiger Leopard Ridge." Chapter 507. Now that the matter with the Celestial Wolf Empire had been dealt with, they only had to wait for the army to gather before launching an attack on the Celestial Wolf Empire. However, before that, Xiao Chen intended to personally make a trip to Tiger Leopard Ridge. After all, the key to the outcome of this battle was the joint forces of the Moonless Empire and the demon beasts of Tiger Leopard Ridge. Otherwise, the Moonless Empire was obviously unable to annihilate the Celestial Wolf Empire by itself. After bidding farewell to Bai Riyue, even though Bai Riyue was worried when she found out that Xiao Chen intended to leave the imperial capital, she didn't stop him and only repeatedly instructed Xiao Chen to take good care of himself. Xiao Chen nodded repeatedly in response to his mother's instructions. However, when Xiao Chen was about to leave, he was stopped by Gu Lingyao. During this period of time, Gu Lingyao had always been in the Moonless Empire's imperial capital, and she said that she wanted to personally bring Xiao Chen to the Celestial Unity sect. At this moment, when she heard that Xiao Chen intended to head to Tiger Leopard Ridge, Gu Lingyao actually wanted to follow him. "Are you alright? What's a little girl like you doing at Tiger Leopard Ridge?" Xiao Chen spoke angrily when he heard Gu Lingyao. "Why can't I go? I've been bored to death these past 2 days." Gu Lingyao spoke angrily when she heard Xiao Chen. Gu Lingyao had been staying in the imperial capital these past few days, and she was really bored to death. Xiao Chen didn't have the time to accompany her as well. After that, Xiao Chen brought Gu Lingyao to Tiger Leopard Ridge. Xiao Chen brought Gu Xiu, a Dao King Realm expert, while Gu Lingyao brought Tian Guochuan, a Dao Emperor Realm expert. After they arrived at Hulao Pass from the teleportation formation in the imperial capital, the 4 of them quickly entered Tiger Leopard Ridge. To others, Tiger Leopard Ridge was a forbidden area that absolutely couldn't be trespassed. However, due to the presence of the Tiger Emperor and Leopard Emperor, the demon beasts of Tiger Leopard Ridge didn't dare harm Xiao Chen's group. They arrived at the demon beast village very smoothly and met the Tiger Emperor and Leopard Emperor. The 2 beast emperors were very calm when they saw Xiao Chen, but they were slightly surprised when they saw Gu Lingyao. As Gu Qi's only daughter, the 2 beast kings naturally knew Gu Lingyao. Although they had never seen her in person, they had seen her portrait. After all, Tiger Leopard Ridge was located in Danyang County, and they had to have some understanding of the human world. "Miss Gu has also come to my Tiger Leopard Ridge. What a surprise!" The Tiger Emperor laughed softly as he looked at Gu Lingyao. Gu Lingyao wasn't nervous at all when she heard the Tiger Emperor, and she replied with a smile, "I came with Xiao Chen. But to be honest, it's my first time here." With Gu Lingyao's identity, Gu Qi naturally wouldn't allow her to come to a place like Tiger Leopard Ridge. After all, everyone knew how ferocious the demon beasts were. At this moment, if Gu Qi knew that Xiao Chen had actually brought his only daughter to Tiger Leopard Ridge, who knew what Gu Qi would think? Compared to Gu Lingyao's ease, Tian Guochuan seemed to be slightly nervous. He'd been following closely behind Gu Lingyao and was on guard at all times. He was deeply afraid that the demon beasts would suddenly go berserk and harm Gu Lingyao. He wasn't displeased with Gu Lingyao's arrival. After greeting her, the Tiger Emperor looked at Xiao Chen and said, "Xiao Chen, did you come to my Tiger Leopard Ridge to find your second sister?" The Tiger Emperor and the Leopard Emperor were naturally most concerned about the dragon blood essence. However, Xiao Chen shook his head and said, "Not yet. I came this time to discuss the matter of attacking the Heavenly Wolf Empire with Lord Beast Emperor." These 2 beast emperors were too impatient. How long had it been? He hadn't even left the Moonless Empire. How was he going to find Long Qing? After hearing that Xiao Chen had come to attack the Heavenly Wolf Empire, the 2 beast emperors' interest greatly decreased. They weren't very interested in attacking the Heavenly Wolf Empire, but they didn't refuse. After all, this was what they had agreed on before. Currently, the Moonless Empire's army had begun to gather at Hulao Pass. There were no less than 10 million of them now. It was obvious that the Moonless Empire was truly preparing to launch an all-out attack on the Heavenly Wolf Empire. Furthermore, the two Beast Emperors had heard about what had happened in the Moonless Empire during this period of time. They knew that the true ruler of the Moonless Empire was the Crown Prince, Chu Wuming. According to what we said before, once the Moonless Empire and the Heavenly Wolf Empire start fighting, the demonic beasts of my Tiger Leopard Ridge will take action. However, Shao Qin, you have to remember that after this matter is over, the Moonless Empire's army will have to kneel before my Tiger Leopard Ridge, the Tiger Emperor said as he looked at Shao Qin. Being able to devour the Heavenly Wolf Empire's army of over 10 million was naturally very beneficial to the demonic beasts of Tiger Leopard Ridge. However, to the Tiger Emperor and the Leopard Emperor, it was a drop in the bucket. After all, 4 demonic beasts at their level, the benefits of devouring human cultivators were far too little. It was almost negligible. However, for the sake of the demonic beasts below, as well as the fact that this matter would not harm Tiger Leopard Ridge, the Tiger Emperor and the Leopard Emperor chose to agree. Just as Shao Qin and the demonic beasts of Tiger Leopard Ridge finally agreed, the Moonless Empire's army within Hulao Pass also began to move. In the Empire War, Chu Wuming, Chu Qinshan, Chu Mu Bai, the Burning Sky Ruler, and the other core figures of the Moonless Empire had all arrived at the border of Hulao Pass. It could be said that almost all of the Moonless Empire's experts had arrived at Hulao Pass. Along with everyone's arrival, Shao Qin also sent back news from Tiger Leopard Ridge. On this day, Chu Wuming had finally given the order to attack. With the 4 great princes and the 8 great dukes as the vanguard, they directly launched an attack on the Heavenly Wolf Empire. In order to take down the Heavenly Wolf Empire, the first thing they had to do was naturally break through Hulao Pass. Therefore, the vanguard that Chu Wuming arranged could be said to be very powerful. Just as the Moonless Empire's army began to move, the Heavenly Wolf Empire received the news and quickly sent it back to the imperial capital. After learning that the Moonless Empire had actually launched an attack, the Emperor of the Heavenly Wolf Empire was furious within the imperial palace. Damn it! How dare that brat Chu Wuming attack my Heavenly Wolf Empire? I'll definitely destroy him and the Moonless Empire. The Moonless Empire's attack infuriated the Emperor of the Heavenly Wolf Empire to the extreme. At the same time, he immediately ordered the garrison of Hulao Pass to face the enemy. At the same time, he sent many experts towards Hulao Pass. The battle was on the verge of erupting. The entire Hulao Pass had instantly transformed into a hellish battlefield. An army of a few tens of millions fought once more. Even Dao emperors faced the risk of death here, let alone Dao exalts and Dao kings. Their lives were only slightly more precious than ordinary cultivators. Battle cries and the sound of metal colliding rose and fell. The two armies clashed. For a moment, the battle was extremely tragic. The Heavenly Wolf Empire did its best to resist the Moonless Empire's attack. For a moment, both sides seemed to have entered a stalemate. Chapter 508. In terms of strength, the Moonless Empire and the Heavenly Wolf Empire were equally matched, so the Moonless Empire didn't gain any advantage from the start of the battle. On the battlefield, the experts of the Heavenly Wolf Empire and the Moonless Empire fought fiercely in the sky. A Dao King expert sneered, "Your Moonless Empire is courting death. You actually dared to attack our Heavenly Wolf Empire. You're simply digging your own grave." The generals of the Heavenly Wolf Empire thought that the Moonless Empire had gone mad for daring to launch such a large-scale attack. However, the generals of the Moonless Empire only laughed disdainfully. "A bunch of idiots. This time, we'll completely destroy your Heavenly Wolf Empire." The Moonless Empire naturally couldn't destroy the Heavenly Wolf Empire by itself. Otherwise, how could the two countries have been at odds for hundreds of years without being able to do anything to each other? However, this time, Xiao Chun had successfully convinced the demon beasts of Tiger Leopard Ridge. This way, the Heavenly Wolf Empire would be destroyed. The war broke out. With tens of millions of people fighting, it was naturally difficult to determine the outcome in a short period of time. Several days passed in a row. The Moonless Empire launched attacks every day, but the Heavenly Wolf Empire didn't show any signs of weakness. The two countries could be said to be fighting back and forth. Chu Wuming was sitting with a group of Moonless Empire's experts in the general's mansion in Jinshan City. At this time, the Gong Prince, one of the 4 imperial princes, spoke with a dignified expression. "Your Highness Crown Prince, it's already been 3 days. The demon beasts of Tiger Leopard Ridge still haven't made a move?" The news of the alliance between the Moonless Empire and the demon beasts of Tiger Leopard Ridge had already been told to everyone. However, 3 days had already passed in a row. Every day, the armies of the two countries fought to the death, but the demon beasts of Tiger Leopard Ridge showed no signs of making a move. If this continued, the Empire's army would suffer heavy losses. Hearing the Gong Prince's words, Chu Wuming was helpless. Since Xiao Chun sent back the news 3 days ago, there had been no follow-up. However, Chu Wuming still believed in Xiao Chun, so he launched an attack. Sighing lightly, Chu Wuming said indifferently, "How are the casualties of our army?" "Replying to your Majesty, after 3 days of fierce fighting, our army has lost nearly 500,000 people, the number of seriously injured has reached 1 million, and the number of people with light injuries is innumerable." Facing Chu Wuming's inquiry, the Gong Prince replied truthfully. Chu Wuming sank into silence after hearing the Gong Prince's reply. The number of casualties was indeed not small in a short 3 days. However, Chu Wuming quickly said in a deep voice, "Continue the attack. You must break through this Hulao Pass for me." Chu Wuming had no intention of giving up. He believed in Xiao Chun. Hearing Chu Wuming's words, everyone present nodded respectfully. The offensive of the Moonless Empire was getting fiercer and fiercer by the day. On the 7th day of the outbreak of the war, the armies of both sides were engaged in a fierce battle. But suddenly, from both sides of the Tiger Leopard Ridge, there were deafening roars of beasts. At the same time, along with the roars of these demonic beasts, the ground also began to shake. Feeling the shaking of the ground, it was naturally not an earthquake, but the imagination of countless demonic beasts running wildly. The demonic beasts of the Tiger Leopard Ridge are rioting? Sensing this change, the experts of the Heavenly Wolf Empire were somewhat confused. They thought that the demonic beasts of the Tiger Leopard Ridge were rioting again. After all, such incidents had happened before. However, on the other side, the experts of the Moonless Empire sneered. Many of them whispered softly, "Are they finally here? The demonic beasts of the Tiger Leopard Ridge." The experts of the Moonless Empire naturally knew that this was not a demonic beast rioting. Just as the armies of both empires were having their own thoughts, from the deep mountains and dense forests on both sides, wild demonic beasts madly rushed out. Then, without the slightest hesitation, they charged towards the army of the Heavenly Wolf Empire. In the beginning, there were only some low-ranked demonic beasts. However, gradually, high-ranked demonic beasts that had taken human form appeared. Each of them stood in the air and looked at the army of the Heavenly Wolf Empire as they shouted coldly, "Ha ha, little bastards, today is a good day for you. Eat as much as you want and devour these soldiers of the Heavenly Wolf Empire." Following the furious roars of the high-ranked demonic beasts and the attack of the demonic beast army, the expression of the army of the Heavenly Wolf Empire changed drastically. What was going on? Why were the demonic beasts of the Tiger Leopard Ridge attacking them? They could clearly see that after the demonic beasts of the Tiger Leopard Ridge appeared, they did not harm the soldiers of the Moonless Empire. Instead, they charged towards the soldiers of the Heavenly Wolf Empire. Damn it, Could it be that the demonic beasts of the Tiger-Leopard Ridge have joined forces with the Moonless Empire? Very quickly, the experts of the Heavenly Wolf Empire guessed this point. Their hearts were filled with doubts. However, now was not the time to talk about this. With the addition of the demonic beast army, the situation of the battle instantly changed. The side of the Moonless Empire was actually victorious. With the help of the demonic beast army, they quickly gained the upper hand. On the other hand, the Heavenly Wolf Empire was facing the army of the Moonless Empire and the demonic beasts of the Tiger-Leopard Ridge at the same time. For a moment they were forced to retreat. More importantly, their morale was greatly reduced. There were even some soldiers who began to flee towards the rear. No one knew exactly how many demonic beasts there were in the Tiger-Leopard Ridge. However, one thing was certain: there were definitely not less than 10 million demonic beasts. The experts of the Moonless Empire coldly shouted as the demonic beasts of the Tiger-Leopard Ridge finally attacked. Soldiers, charge! Breaking through Hulao Pass will be a great achievement. Damn it, damn it! The Moonless Empire is indeed prepared. They have actually joined forces with the demonic beasts of the Tiger-Leopard Ridge. Quick, inform the rear to send reinforcements. At the same time, immediately send a message to inform His Majesty of this matter. Compared to the Moonless Empire, the experts of the Heavenly Wolf Empire were clearly incomparably depressed. The news of the demonic beasts of the Tiger-Leopard Ridge joining the battle was quickly transmitted to the imperial capital of the Heavenly Wolf Empire. When the Emperor of the Heavenly Wolf Empire received this news, his face immediately paled. His legs became soft and he almost fell to the ground. Fortunately, the people of the temple beside him supported him. How is this possible? How is this possible? How is it possible that the demonic beasts of the Tiger-Leopard Ridge have joined forces with the Moonless Empire? How did the Moonless Empire convince the two beast emperors of the Tiger-Leopard Ridge? The Emperor of the Heavenly Wolf Empire muttered in disbelief with a face full of shock. He was completely unable to accept this fact. A long while later, the Emperor of the Heavenly Wolf Empire suddenly recovered. He no longer cared about his dignity and roared at the people of the temple beside him. Quickly go and invite the retired emperor. Also, order people to go to the Gale Empire and the Qingyang sect. Ask them to help. No matter what price we have to pay, we must convince them to help. Otherwise, our Heavenly Wolf Empire will be finished. He clearly knew that the Heavenly Wolf Empire could not stop the alliance of the Moonless Empire and the Tiger-Leopard Ridge. Therefore, the Emperor of the Heavenly Wolf Empire had no choice but to ask for help from the Gale Empire and the Qingyang sect. This was the only way to get through this crisis. As for the price he had to pay to convince the two parties, it was no longer within the Emperor of the Heavenly Wolf Empire's consideration. Chapter 509. The appearance of the demonic beasts from Tiger-Leopard Ridge had pushed the Heavenly Wolf Empire into a desperate situation. Anyone could see that the Heavenly Wolf Empire had no chance of winning against both the Moonless Empire and Tiger-Leopard Ridge. Just like the Emperor of the Heavenly Wolf Empire, the Bloodwolf King's expression changed drastically after receiving the news. He kept muttering to himself, as expected, as expected. The Bloodwolf King had already guessed this before, but he didn't believe that Shao Chun could persuade the Tiger Emperor and Leopard Emperor. But now, it seemed that Shao Chun had done it. The Tiger Emperor and Leopard Emperor had really joined forces with the Moonless Empire. In the history of Danyang County, this was the first time a demonic beast had joined forces with a human. Damn it! How could that little bastard convince the Tiger Emperor and Leopard Emperor? After the initial shock, the Bloodwolf King flew into a rage. At the same time, a trace of extreme fear uncontrollably emerged from the bottom of his heart. The Bloodwolf King hadn't forgotten Shao Chen's murderous expression and words back at Tiger-Leopard Ridge. Bloodwolf King, wash your neck and wait. I will definitely kill you with my own hand. The Bloodwolf King had thought that this sentence was just a joke, But who would have thought that Shao Chun could actually persuade the demonic beasts from Tiger Leopard Ridge? The news of the alliance between the Tiger Leopard Ridge and the Moonless Empire quickly spread throughout the Heavenly Wolf Empire. After all, such a thing couldn't be hidden. In the face of the alliance between the Moonless Empire and Tiger Leopard Ridge, the Heavenly Wolf Empire desperately sent reinforcements to Hulao Pass, but it didn't have much effect. The difference in strength was too big. The Heavenly Wolf Empire's only chance was the Qingyang sect and the Gale Empire. As long as either one of them was willing to help, the Heavenly Wolf Empire could reverse the situation. The Heavenly Wolf Empire had already sent envoys to the Gale Empire and the Qingyang sect, but the Gale Empire's answer was very clear. They wouldn't interfere in this war. Thinking about it, Shao Chun had already ordered Zhang Qi and the Gale Empire to attack first. Without doing anything, the Gale Empire would be able to obtain 1/3 of the Heavenly Wolf Empire's territory. Naturally, the Heavenly Wolf Empire would not be able to offer such a price. After all, no empire would be willing to give away 1/3 of their territory at once. Moreover, even if they could, the Gale Empire would not agree. The reason was very simple. If they cooperated with the Moonless Empire, the Gale Empire would not have to do anything. However, if they cooperated with the Heavenly Wolf Empire, then the Gale Empire would have to send troops. Comparing the two, even an idiot would choose the Moonless Empire. The attitude of the Gale Empire was very clear. However, the Qingyang sect did offer a price, but it was ridiculously high. Even the Emperor of the Celestial Wolf Empire gasped when he heard the price offered by the Qingyang sect. What? 100 million mid-grade spirit stones? In addition, there are all kinds of elixirs, talismans, and countless natural treasures. Is the Qingyang sect trying to take advantage of the situation? The Emperor of the Heavenly Wolf Empire shouted angrily in the Imperial Palace. The price offered by the Qingyang sect could be said to have almost emptied the foundation of the Heavenly Wolf Empire for countless years. It was absolutely taking advantage of the situation. The Emperor of the Heavenly Wolf Empire was furious, but he also knew that he had no choice. If he did not agree with the Qingyang sect, the Heavenly Wolf Empire would be destroyed. Perhaps the Qingyang sect knew this and dared to offer such a high price. His heart was bleeding. If he agreed with the Qingyang sect, the wealth that the Heavenly Wolf Empire had accumulated for so many years would be gone in an instant. However, if he did not agree, the Heavenly Wolf Empire would be destroyed. In the end, the Emperor of the Heavenly Wolf Empire said coldly, "Tell the Qingyang sect that I agree to their conditions and ask them to immediately send experts to support us." In the end, he chose to agree. After receiving the reply from the Heavenly Wolf Empire, the Qingyang sect did not go back on their words and quickly sent experts to the Moonless Empire. There were a total of 200,000 disciples, nearly 10,000 deacons, and 10 elders. Although the Qingyang sect did not send many people, their strength was not to be underestimated. After all, the two sects did not rely on numbers to dominate. They were not like the three great empires which had billions of people. As sects, they took the path of elite. Therefore, the strength of the 200,000 disciples, 10,000 deacons, and 10 elders was not weaker than an army of tens of millions. After all, the cultivation and combat strength of the soldiers could not be compared to the sect disciples. In general, it was normal for a sect disciple to casually destroy thousands of soldiers. The Qingyang sect had already sent out reinforcements. At the same time, in the Tianqi sect, Gu Qi was sitting in a garden and listening to the report of an elder below with a faint smile on his face. The Qingyang sect has already acted? Yes, according to the news, the reinforcements sent by the Qingyang sect are already on their way to the Heavenly Wolf Empire, the elder respectfully replied. In that case, it's time for us to take action. Make the arrangements. You will personally lead a team to stop the Qingyang sect. Remember, our goal this time is not to defeat them, but to stall them, said Gu Qi. According to the previous agreement, The Tianqi sect would naturally be responsible for stopping the Qingyang sect, since the Qingyang sect had already taken action. As for the benefits, the things that the Heavenly Wolf Empire gave to the Qingyang sect would all belong to the Tianqi sect. This was what Xiao Qin and Gu Qi had discussed from the beginning. On the other side, the Emperor of the Heavenly Wolf Empire secretly heaved a sigh of relief after receiving the news that the Qingyang sect had sent reinforcements to the Heavenly Wolf Empire. However, before he could completely relax, another piece of news came. This news was like a thunderbolt that struck the Emperor of the Heavenly Wolf Empire. The news was very clear. The Qingyang sect had indeed sent reinforcements, but they were stopped by the Tianqi sect before they could enter the Heavenly Wolf Empire. The Tianqi sect had also sent 200,000 disciples, 10,000 deacons, and 10 elders to block the reinforcements of the Qingyang sect and prevent them from entering the Heavenly Wolf Empire. Damn it! Did the Tianqi sect also join forces with the Moonless Empire? It was not easy to persuade the Qingyang sect and pay such a huge price, but in the end they were blocked by the Tianqi sect. As a result, the Heavenly Wolf Empire still did not have any reinforcement. Half a month had passed since the outbreak of the war. Hulao Pass had also been successfully breached by the joint forces of the Moonless Empire and the Tiger Leopard Ridge. The two allied forces went straight into the hinterland of the Heavenly Wolf Empire and quickly annexed many territories of the Heavenly Wolf Empire. Moreover, according to Chu Wuming's order, the allied forces did not slow down and surrounded the imperial capital of the Heavenly Wolf Empire. Without a dangerous place like the Tiger Leopard Ridge to defend, the Heavenly Wolf Empire retreated even faster. At this rate, the joint forces of the Moonless Empire and the Tiger Leopard Ridge would arrive at the imperial capital of the Heavenly Wolf Empire in a few days. When the time came, the Heavenly Wolf Empire would be finished. Chapter 510. The Heavenly Wolf Empire's hopes had been shattered time and time again. They originally thought that the Moonless Empire had gone crazy, which was why they dared to invade the Heavenly Wolf Empire on such a large scale. However, the appearance of the demonic beasts from the Tiger Leopard Ridge stunned everyone in the Heavenly Wolf Empire. The Azure Sun sect then agreed to help the Heavenly Wolf Empire, but they were now blocked by the Celestial Equal sect. How could the Emperor of the Heavenly Wolf Empire not know that this battle had been carefully planned by the Moonless Empire? They had calculated everything for the Heavenly Wolf Empire. Of course, what the Emperor of the Heavenly Wolf Empire didn't expect was that this battle to destroy the Heavenly Wolf Empire wasn't planned by Chu Wuming at all, but by Xiao Qin. As for the reason, it was because of a woman. If it weren't for what the Blood Wolf King had done to Bai Ryue, why would Xiao Qin be so crazy to destroy the Heavenly Wolf Empire? If the Emperor of the Heavenly Wolf Empire knew the truth, who knew what he would think? Perhaps he would strangle the Blood Wolf King to death, because if it weren't for him, the Heavenly Wolf Empire wouldn't have fallen to such a state. Everything had been planned out by Xiao Qin. Within the Imperial Palace, the Emperor of the Heavenly Wolf Empire seemed to have aged a lot in an instant, and his entire person became extremely desolate. Unlike the desolation of the Heavenly Wolf Empire, the Moonless Empire's morale was high. Under the personal leadership of Chu Wuming, the Moonless Empire's army quickly arrived at the imperial capital of the Heavenly Wolf Empire. It could be said that they were unstoppable. Your Highness, we will reach the imperial capital of the Heavenly Wolf Empire in at most 1 day. At that time, as long as we take over the imperial capital of the Heavenly Wolf Empire, victory will be assured, Zhao Feng said to Chu Wuming with an excited smile on his face. Hearing Zhao Feng's words, Chu Wuming also revealed a faint smile and nodded his head. Pass down the order. The entire army will advance quickly. I will surround the imperial capital of the Heavenly Wolf Empire before nightfall tomorrow. Yes, Zhao Feng respectfully replied. Chu Wuming gave the order to travel at full speed. At the same time, Xiao Chen and Gu Lingyao's group of 4 also left Tiger Leopard Ridge with the Tiger Emperor and Panther Emperor, rushing towards the Skywolf Empire's capital. He had heard about the fall of Hulao Pass a long time ago. Moreover, he knew that the allied army of the Moonless Empire and Tiger Leopard Ridge had arrived at the imperial capital. So, Xiao Chen hurried towards the imperial capital as well. While rushing, Xiao Chen's eyes flashed with a strong killing intent as he whispered, "Blood Wolf King, I wonder if you've ever thought that this day would come." It was impossible for Xiao Chen to let the Blood Wolf King go. When he thought of what the Blood Wolf King had done in the past, Xiao Chen's heart was overflowing with killing intent. It was no exaggeration to say that his mother, Bai Ruyue, was definitely Xiao Chen's reverse scale. If anyone dared to harm Bai Ruyue in the slightest, Xiao Chen would not let them off. The Moonless Empire's army advanced rapidly. At noon the next day, the vanguard had already arrived at the imperial capital of the Heavenly Wolf Empire. At this moment, the gates of the imperial capital of the Heavenly Wolf Empire were tightly shut. At the same time, the city protecting array had already been activated. Within the imperial palace, the Emperor of the Heavenly Wolf Empire looked at the 2 old men below him and the experts of the Heavenly Wolf Empire under the Blood Wolf King. He said in a hoarse voice, "The Moonless Empire's army has already arrived at the city. Everyone, we no longer have a path of retreat. We can only fight to the death." The 2 old men were the retired emperors of the Heavenly Wolf Empire, Dao Emperors. When they heard the Emperor's words, the 2 of them sighed. A fight to the death was actually just their own wishful thinking. With the strength of the Moonless Empire and Tiger Leopard Ridge, the Heavenly Wolf Empire had already lost the qualifications to fight to the death. The strength of both sides was simply not equal. However, they had clearly never thought about surrendering. After all, as members of the imperial family, how could the Moonless Empire possibly accept their surrender? Perhaps the Moonless Empire would be lenient when facing the clans and officials of the Heavenly Wolf Empire. However, the Moonless Empire would definitely annihilate the imperial family of the Heavenly Wolf Empire. After any battle, the victorious empire would obviously not let the imperial family of the defeated empire go. This was beyond doubt. So, even if they no longer had the slightest chance, the imperial family of the Heavenly Wolf Empire still didn't have any thoughts of surrendering because they couldn't. When they heard His Majesty's words, the 2 retired emperors sighed softly. On the other hand, the others all had their own ulterior motive. Anyone with a discerning eye could tell that the Heavenly Wolf Empire had no chance at all. They weren't the imperial family. If they chose to surrender, they might be able to keep their lives. After all, the Moonless Empire had to send people to manage the Heavenly Wolf Empire after they defeated it. On the surface, they didn't say anything. However, behind their backs, the officials had already begun to arrange their own escape routes. Many of them had secretly chosen to surrender. However, among the officials, there was one person whose expression was abnormally ugly. It was the Blood Wolf King. Just like the imperial family, he knew very well that he couldn't surrender because Xiao Chen was here. To put it bluntly, Xiao Chen could let anyone go, but he wouldn't. The Blood Wolf King was very clear about this. A heavy aura spread throughout the hall. Subsequently, the Emperor of the Heavenly Wolf Empire arranged the defense of the imperial capital. Currently, there were already 3 million troops stationed in the imperial capital. Moreover, all of them were elite troops. Moreover, there were also the extremely powerful Heavenly Wolf Guards. Such a defensive force seemed very strong. However, to be honest, it was simply impossible to rely on this to block the allied forces of the Moonless Empire and Tiger Leopard Ridge. They could only struggle at death's door. It was as if they were waiting for death. This feeling was extremely unpleasant. All kinds of emotions constantly converged in their hearts. Compared to the heavy atmosphere of the Heavenly Wolf Empire, outside the imperial capital, Xiao Chen, Gu Lingyao, Tiger Emperor, Leopard Emperor, and the others had successfully met up with Chu Wuming at the Moonless Empire's encampment. Seeing that Xiao Chen had returned, Chu Wuming appeared to be very happy. However, because the Tiger Emperor and Leopard Emperor were still at the side, Chu Wuming didn't dare to chat too much with Xiao Chen. Instead, he respectfully greeted the two Beast Kings. "Welcome, Lord Beast Kings. Haha, you're Chu Wuming, right? Not bad, not bad. If you're in charge of the Moonless Empire in the future, then we can communicate more." The Tiger Emperor laughed loudly when he heard Chu Wuming, and he didn't put on any airs. The group entered the commander's tent and chatted for a while before Chu Qinshan invited the Tiger Emperor and Leopard Emperor to drink. After all, they were Beast Kings. If they wanted to entertain them, then they naturally needed a Tao Emperor like Chu Qinshan. Their strengths were on par with each other, so only then would they be able to talk on equal terms. At the same time, only then would it show how much importance the Moonless Empire attached to the two Beast Kings. Only Xiao Chen, Chu Wuming, and Gu Lingyao remained in the tent. Chu Wuming looked at Xiao Chen and said with a smile, "Brother Xiao, I'll give the order to attack the city tomorrow. I believe it won't be long before we'll be able to take the imperial capital of the Skywolf Empire." Chapter 511. Hearing Chu Wuming's words, Xiao Chen nodded his head slightly. Xiao Chen was not worried about the imperial capital. The situation had already been decided, and no matter what the Heavenly Wolf Empire did, it would not change anything. At this moment there was only one thought in Xiao Chen's mind, and that was to kill the Bloodwolf King. Only by killing the Bloodwolf King would Xiao Chen be able to leave the Moonless Empire and head to the Tianqi sect and Tianfeng Xingzong in the future. Without any pressure, the Heavenly Wolf Empire's situation had already been decided. That night, Xiao Chen and Chu Wuming drank a little wine together. Of course, Gu Lingyao was naturally with them. The night quickly passed. On the morning of the second day, Chu Wuming gave the order to attack. In an instant, the Moonless Empire's army and the demonic beasts of the Tiger Leopard Ridge launched an all-out attack. The Moonless Empire's army that besieged the imperial capital numbered in the tens of millions. The demonic beasts of the Tiger Leopard Ridge numbered in the millions. With such a large army, it was only a matter of time before they took down the imperial capital that was guarded by only a few hundred people. Xiao Chen did not participate in the siege. After all, with Xiao Chen's current strength, it was obvious that he could not influence the situation of the battle. Moreover, if he rashly participated, it would be too dangerous. Moreover, Xiao Chen was not interested in other matters. His only goal was to kill the Bloodwolf King. Standing in the camp, his gaze was fixed on the imperial capital. There were terrifying aftershocks of the battle. Xiao Chen's expression was calm, but his eyes flickered with dense killing intent. He softly muttered, "Bloodwolf King, we will meet again very soon." The battle erupted. The Moonless Empire's army heavily surrounded the imperial capital. Countless attacks continuously landed on the imperial capital's great city barrier array. Judging from the intensity of the attacks, it would not be long before the imperial capital's great city barrier array collapsed. Without the protection of the great city barrier array, the imperial capital was just a piece of fat meat that the Moonless Empire could devour in a single bite. However, in the face of the Moonless Empire's attack, the Heavenly Wolf Empire clearly wouldn't allow themselves to be captured without a fight. They constantly counterattacked, and for a time, the Moonless Empire suffered quite a number of casualties. They didn't participate in the siege. Chu Qinshan, Chu Mubai, the Burning Sky Ruler, the Tiger Emperor, and the Panther Emperor were watching the siege coldly from the horizon. They did not make a move because they were waiting for the experts of the Heavenly Wolf Empire to appear. Everyone knew that there were two retired emperors in the Heavenly Wolf Empire. Time slowly flowed by. In the end, after 2 full days of intense battle, the great city barrier of the Heavenly Wolf Empire's imperial capital was finally unable to endure any longer and shattered with a loud bang. With the formation broken, the Moonless Empire's army immediately rushed up the city wall, and the two armies immediately clashed. There were already Heavenly Wolf guards among the defenders of the Heavenly Wolf Empire. Moreover, the experts of the Heavenly Wolf Empire were also fighting fiercely with the experts of the Moonless Empire. Among them was the Emperor of the Heavenly Wolf Empire. As the imperial capital was breached, the Emperor naturally couldn't sit on the high platform anymore. Like ordinary warriors, the Emperor of the Heavenly Wolf Empire was also fighting fiercely with the Gong Prince of the Moonless Empire. Both of them were Dao sovereigns, and for a time they were equally matched. The battle below was in full swing. Above the clouds in the sky, in front of Chu Qingshan and the other four, two old men appeared. These two old men were the retired emperors of the Heavenly Wolf Empire, the two strongest people in the Heavenly Wolf Empire. Looking calmly at Chu Qingshan, one of the old men said with a wry smile, "Brother Chu, how have you been? Brother Su, you're too polite." "I'm very well, but I'm afraid the Heavenly Wolf Empire is about to fall," Chu Qingshan said indifferently when he heard the old man's words. Glancing indifferently at the battle below, the old man didn't refute Chu Qingshan's words and said indifferently, "Yes, the Heavenly Wolf Empire is about to fall." Although the two sides were still engaged in an intense battle, anyone with a discerning eye could tell that it would not last for long. This was because many of the Heavenly Wolf Empire's experts had chosen to surrender after just a single exchange. Facing the army of the Moonless Empire, all the major clans and ministers put down the weapons in their hands and chose to surrender. They couldn't be blamed for choosing to surrender. This was human nature. After all, they weren't the imperial family of the Heavenly Wolf Empire. Now that a disaster was imminent, how many people would fight to the death for the imperial family of the Heavenly Wolf Empire? It was also because of these people's surrender that the number of experts on the Heavenly Wolf Empire's side dropped rapidly. The originally inferior situation became even more one-sided at this time. Hearing the sigh of the retired Emperor of the Heavenly Wolf Empire, Chu Qingshan felt a little complicated. They belonged to two different empires, and it could be said that they were destined to be enemies from the moment they were born. However, after so many years of constant competition, Chu Qingshan and the two old men had developed some friendship. After all, they'd once drank and chatted merrily together. What a pity! I never expected that I would actually be the one to send you on your way one day, Brother Su. Chu Qingshan sighed lightly and spoke with slight sadness. Haha, it's fine, it's fine. Even though I regret it, I've already tried my best. Brother Chu, let's do it. The old man laughed loudly when faced with Chu Qingshan's sigh, and then he actually took the initiative to attack Chu Qingshan and the others. Even though they knew that they couldn't defeat them, the two retired emperors of the Heavenly Wolf Empire still chose to attack. They were the imperial family of the Heavenly Wolf Empire, and there were even Dao emperors amongst them. At the same time, they were the protectors of the Heavenly Wolf Empire. So, compared to surrendering, perhaps dying on the battlefield was the best outcome for them. Chu Qingshan and the others naturally didn't stand by idly when faced with their attacks. They attacked at the first possible moment, and both sides immediately entered into battle. It was a chaotic battle between 7 Dao emperors, and it was 2 against none. There was no suspense at all about the outcome. Along with the intense battle between the various Dao Emperor realm experts erupting, numerous terrifying pressures descended from the sky above. Even though they possessed an absolute advantage, annihilating the 2 retired emperors of the Heavenly Wolf Empire wasn't something that could be accomplished in a short period of time. After all, the vitality of Dao emperors was extremely tenacious, and it wasn't easy to kill them. Of course, if a saint or even a half-saint made a move, then it would be a completely different matter because they weren't on the same level at all. In the sky, the battle between the Dao emperors was extremely intense. At the same time, there was another person that was fighting desperately within the imperial capital, and it was the Bloodwolf King. He wasn't in the main battlefield. At this moment, the Bloodwolf King was desperately trying to break out of the encirclement, and his objective was extremely obvious. He wanted to flee. Earlier, he'd been constantly looking for an opportunity to flee. Unfortunately, he hadn't been able to find such an opportunity. Now, while the imperial capital was in chaos, the Bloodwolf King knew that this was his last chance. So, he didn't hesitate at all to choose a weak point in the Moonless Empire's army and lead his trusted aides to break out of the encirclement. Chapter 5:12. About a dozen people followed the Bloodwolf King to break out of the encirclement. One of them was a Dao Master like the Bloodwolf King, and 2 were Dao King realm. The rest were all in the Dao Transformation realm. There were not many people, but their strength was not weak. In addition, this was the weak point of the Moonless Empire's army. There were no experts here, and the ordinary soldiers were no match for the Bloodwolf King. Therefore, the Bloodwolf King was about to succeed in breaking out of the encirclement. "Quick, kill our way out!" the Bloodwolf King shouted angrily. He was only 1 step away from breaking out of the encirclement. However, just as the Bloodwolf King's voice fell, a mocking voice sounded. "Break out? Bloodwolf King, I'm afraid you're overthinking." Along with the voice, Zhang Qi, Sikong Ming, and a group of warriors from the heavenly Chen continent appeared in front of the Bloodwolf King. Before the battle began, Xiao Chen had instructed Zhang Qi and Sikong Ming to lead the warriors from the heavenly Chen continent to find the Bloodwolf King. They must not let him escape in the chaos. The warriors from the heavenly Chen continent were brought here by Xiao Chen from the imperial capital of the Moonless Empire. Their purpose was to capture the Bloodwolf King. They could not let him escape. Zhang Qi and the others appeared to block the Bloodwolf King's path. Seeing this, the Bloodwolf King's face darkened. However, since things had already come to this, the Bloodwolf King could only cut off all means of retreat. He immediately shouted angrily, "Kill them! Charge out!" Bloodwolf King knew that it was impossible for him to surrender. Xiao Chen would not let him go, so he had to fight. As long as he could get out of the Moonless Empire's army, it would not be difficult for him to survive with his cultivation, even if he could not become a powerful warrior in this world. Of course, the premise was that the Bloodwolf King could successfully break out. Otherwise, there was nothing to talk about. Hearing the Bloodwolf King's words, the dozen or so experts who followed the Bloodwolf King also charged toward the heavenly Chen continent's army. Seeing this, Zhang Qi shouted in a deep voice, "Except for the Bloodwolf King, leave no one alive. Kill them all." Xiao Chen's order was to capture the Bloodwolf King alive. As for the others, there was no need to worry about them. Immediately, the 2 sides clashed. Compared to the Bloodwolf King's side, the heavenly Chen continent's side had an absolute advantage in terms of numbers. They had a total of 30 people. As a result, there was no suspense in the outcome of the battle. The Bloodwolf King also saw this point, so he did not intend to fight to the death. While his subordinates were fighting with the people of the heavenly Chen continent, the Bloodwolf King turned around and prepared to rush out of the encirclement. He didn't even care about his own men. However, Zhang Qi sneered. It was impossible for Bloodwolf King to escape. Everyone present could escape except for Bloodwolf King. From the beginning to the end, Zhang Qi's eyes were locked on Bloodwolf King. "Bloodwolf King, where do you think you can escape to today?" With a cold shout, Zhang Qi immediately rushed towards the Bloodwolf King. Hearing Zhang Qi's angry shout, the Bloodwolf King's face darkened. "Old man, it's you again. You're courting death." Back in Tiger Leopard Ridge, the Bloodwolf King had fought with Zhang Qi, so the 2 of them were not unfamiliar with each other. However, at that time, Zhang Qi was injured, so she wasn't the Bloodwolf King's opponent. But now, the situation was completely reversed. Zhang Qi's current condition could be said to be at her peak, while the Bloodwolf King's injuries were not light because of the previous breakout. Therefore, Zhang Qi directly suppressed the Bloodwolf King. "This old man said that you can't escape today. The young master has named you to be captured alive." While fighting fiercely, Zhang Qi shouted coldly. In less than an hour, the Bloodwolf King's subordinates were all killed by the warriors of the heavenly Chen continent. Even the Dao sovereign warrior was killed by Sikongming. Subsequently, with the help of Sikongming, Zhang Qi and Sikongming successfully captured the Blood Wolf King, crippled his cultivation, and directly took him to the Moonless Empire's barrack. Zhang Qi and Sikongming had been waiting for the end of the battle with Chu Wuming in the barrack. At this time, Zhang Qi and Sikongming strode in with the crippled Blood Wolf King. Kneel. A kick landed on the Blood Wolf King's knee. With a burst of pain, the Blood Wolf King knelt down in front of Xiao Qin and Chu Wuming. Sitting on the high platform in the middle, Xiao Qin looked coldly at the Blood Wolf King below and said expressionlessly, "Blood Wolf King, I said that one day, I will personally chop off your head. It seems that day has come." Hearing Xiao Qin's words, the Blood Wolf King was silent. At this point, he naturally knew what his ending would be. However, he never thought that as one of the 4 great princes of the Heavenly Wolf Empire, he would lose his life because of a woman, and even lead to the destruction of the Heavenly Wolf Empire. He did not answer Xiao Qin's words, nor did he beg for mercy. Although the Blood Wolf King was hateful, he was still a man. At least in the face of death, he could still maintain his calm and did not kneel down and beg for mercy. Looking at the silent Blood Wolf King kneeling below, Xiao Qin did not have the intention to ridicule him. He slowly walked to the front of the Blood Wolf King. The black dragon sword was already in Xiao Qin's hand. With a flash of the sword, the Blood Wolf King's head flew into the air and fell to the ground not far from the corpse. There was no humiliation or torture. Instead, he cleanly ended the Blood Wolf King's life with a single slash. After doing all this, Xiao Qin lightly spat out a mouthful of turbid air. With the Blood Wolf King dead, the hatred in his heart had also disappeared. Next, there was no need for Xiao Qin to do anything. One day later, the imperial capital of the Heavenly Wolf Empire was successfully breached. According to the agreement, the Heavenly Wolf Empire's army was all led by the demonic beasts of the Tiger Leopard Ridge. As a result, the imperial capital of the Heavenly Wolf Empire was naturally filled with a reign of terror. The soldiers guarding the city, whether dead or alive, were all devoured by the demonic beast. However, because of the restraint of the 2 beast emperors, these demonic beasts did not attack the ordinary people. The imperial capital was taken, and the imperial family, including the 2 retired emperors and the emperor, were all dead. As a result, the Heavenly Wolf Empire was declared to be destroyed. Not remaining in the Heavenly Wolf Empire, Xiao Qin brought Zhang Qi and the others back to the imperial capital of the Moonless Empire the day after the battle ended. Now that the matters of the Moonless Empire had been settled, it was time for Xiao Qin to leave. He went to the Tianqi sect and the Windless Sacred sect to start a new chapter in the Tianhe continent. Xiao Qin was actually looking forward to the sacred sect that had a true saint expert. He did not know what kind of cultivation secret realms there were, and how strong the geniuses in the sacred sect would be. Chapter 513. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that the Tianhe continent was stronger than the Tianqian continent. But where was it stronger? It was the sacred sects or sacred clans that were overseen by Saint. Therefore, Xiao Qin was looking forward to the Tianfeng Shengzong because this was the reason why Xiao Qin had come to the Tianhe continent. After spending a few days with Bai Riyue in the imperial capital, Xiao Qin decided to spend as much time as possible with his mother because he was about to leave and he didn't know how long it would take for him to return. The mother and son talked about some trivial matters. Of course, Bai Riyue also warned Xiao Qin a lot. First, she told Xiao Qin to know how to protect himself and take care of himself outside. Secondly, Bai Riyue was worried about Xiao Qing. After all, there was still no news of Xiao Qing. It was obvious that he wasn't in Danyang County. Xiao Qin also told Bai Riyue that he would pay close attention to news of his father. As long as he found his father, Xiao Qin would immediately inform his mother. He didn't need to worry about Bai Riyue's safety. No one in the Moonless Empire dared to harm her. Xiao Qin wasn't worried about this. However, before he left, he also needed to make arrangements for the other warriors in the Tianqian continent. After all, everyone also needed to improve their strength. According to the discussion between Shao Qun and the Burning Sky ruler, the two of them finally decided to let some people stay in the Moonless Empire, or rather, in Danyang County. As for the others, they could go out and gain experience. Those who were talented and wanted to improve would leave the Moonless Empire to gain experience and find their own opportunities. As for those who didn't want to go out and risk their lives, they would stay in the Moonless Empire. Firstly, they could strengthen the Tianqian residents in the Moonless Empire. Secondly, they could receive the Tianqian continent warriors who would arrive in the Moonless Empire in the future. Whether they left or stayed, it was up to them. Shao Qun and the Burning Sky ruler didn't force them. This was an arrangement for the warriors of the Tianqian continent. Secondly, for the younger generation of warriors, other than Mu Feng, Shao Qun planned to let them stay in the Moonless Empire and cultivate in the Royal Academy. After all, these young people's cultivation was still too low. Although the Royal Academy couldn't compare to the Sage Sects, the cultivation environment before the Tao Querying Realm was actually not much different from the Sage Sect. Furthermore, the Royal Academy had the Path of Tao, which could allow people to break through to the Querying Realm faster and more. The younger generation of warriors stayed in the Royal Academy according to Shao Qun's plan. As for Mu Feng, he had already used the Path of Tao Querying Realm. Shao Qun planned to bring him along to participate in the Sage Sect selection. It would be best if he could enter the Sage Sect. Even if he could only become an ordinary disciple of the Tianfeng Xingzong, it would still be a good thing for Mu Feng. After all, Mu Feng was a peerless genius. It would be a waste for him to stay in the Moonless Empire. After about 7 days, Shao Qun finished arranging everything. Whether it was by Ryue or the warriors of the Tianqian continent, they all had their own plans and plans. For example, the Burning Sky ruler still had the title of retired Emperor of the Moonless Empire. However, after Shao Qun left, he wouldn't continue to stay in the Moonless Empire. Instead, he would leave to search for his own opportunities to break through. It was the same for Zhang Qi and Xikong Ming. The two of them also wanted to leave the Moonless Empire to search for the possibility of breaking through to the Tao Emperor realm. The only thing that surprised Shao Qun was Gu Xiu. He didn't plan to stay, but he also didn't plan to go out to train. Instead, he wanted to follow Shao Qun to the Tianfeng Xingzong. According to Gu Xiu, he only wanted to follow Shao Qun. Even if he was just a follower, he was willing to do so. Faced with Gu Xiu's choice, Shao Qun was touched. However, there was nothing he could do. In the end, Shao Qun could only let Gu Xiu stay in the Moonless Empire and wait for him to successfully enter the Tianfeng Xingzong. If he could let Gu Xiu enter the Tianfeng Xingzong as his follower, Shao Qun would send someone to inform Gu Xiu. Gu Xiu had no objection to Shao Qun's decision. Everything was basically settled. In the end, when Chu Wuming returned, Shao Qun also bid farewell to Chu Wuming. It was a cloudless day. By Ryue, the Burning Sky ruler, Chu Wuming, and a group of Heavenly Qin continent cultivators were at the Imperial Capital's teleportation array. Everyone had gathered here to send Shao Qun off. Today was the day that Shao Qun would head to the Tianqi sect. Gu Lingyao, Mu Feng, Tian Guochuan, and the others were accompanying him. Looking at everyone, Shao Qun smiled and said, "Everyone, take care. Young master, you too. You must protect yourself when you're outside." Hearing this, everyone from the Heavenly Qin continent replied in unison. "Brother Shao, have a safe trip. I believe that it won't be long before Brother Zhao's name resounds throughout the Tianfeng prefecture." Chu Wuming smiled. "Chen you must be careful," Bai Ryue said with a reluctant expression. Everyone took turns to bid farewell to Shao Qun. It was also at this moment that Yang Heng and Chen Ju, who had not appeared before, suddenly appeared in front of Shao Qun. Previously, when Chu Wushuang and Chu Wuk were killed, the two of them did not appear. Xiao Qin thought that they had gone to Tianfeng Zone. However, even if the two of them were present, Chu Wuming would not dare to touch them. After all, the two of them were the core disciples of Tianfeng Zone. Their statuses were noble, and they were not people that the Moonless Empire could afford to offend. With a faint smile on their faces, the two of them did not seem to care about Chu Wuk and Chu Wushuang's life and death. Instead, they were more interested in Xiao Qin. Looking at Xiao Qin, Yang Heng spoke first. Brother Xiao Qin, you're going to the Tianqi sect to participate in the Sage sect's selection, right? It seems that it won't be long before we can become brothers. Yang Heng appeared to be very friendly. Regarding this, Xiao Qin smiled and said, perhaps. However, when the time comes, I might need the two of you to take care of me. Haha, Brother Xiao, you must be joking. With Brother Zhao's talent, becoming a core disciple is already a done deal. When the time comes, we might need Brother Xiao to take care of us. Yang Heng laughed heartily. Yang Heng and Qin Ju were also preparing to return to Tianfeng Zone. After all, Chu Wuk and Chu Wushuang were already dead. There was no need for the two of them to stay here. It was also because they heard that Xiao Qin was going to participate in the Sage sect's selection that the two of them rushed over. Following Yang Heng's words, Qin Ju, who had been silent all this while, spoke up softly, "Don't stand out too much during the Sage sect's selection. Otherwise, there won't be any benefit." Qin Ju's words could be considered as a reminder to Xiao Qin. Hearing this, Xiao Qin cupped his hands and thanked him. Following which, the two of them left. Under the lead of Gu Lingyao, Xiao Qin and Mu Feng stepped into the teleportation portal. Following a flash of light that shot up into the sky, everyone's figures quickly disappeared into the portal. Xiao Qin left and stepped onto the path towards Sage Sect. Watching the light of the teleportation portal slowly disappear, Chu Wuming's gaze deepened as he muttered softly, "Brother Xiao, just how far can you go? In Tianfeng Zone, where geniuses gather, can you shine as brightly as you did in the Wu Empire?" Chapter 514. With regards to Tianfeng Zone, Chu Wuming naturally revered him. After all, he wasn't much older than Xiao Qin. Naturally, he had the insolence and hot-bloodedness unique to young people in his heart. He wanted to climb to the peak of martial arts forever. However, as a member of the imperial family, Chu Wuming couldn't abandon the Moonless Empire and go to Tianfeng Zone. Therefore, Chu Wuming hoped that Xiao Qin would be able to set off a storm in the windless sacred sect where geniuses gathered. He firmly believed that with Xiao Qin's strength, even in a place like the windless sacred sect, he would be able to blossom with his own views. In Chu Wuming's eyes, Xiao Qin was such a person. No matter where he was, no one could cover up Xiao Qin's brilliance. Exhaling a mouthful of turbid air, Xiao Qin left. Chu Wuming felt a little uncomfortable in his heart. Not only was Xiao Qin the only friend Chu Wuming could be said to be his only true friend. As for the others, they were just flatterers. He turned around and returned to the imperial palace. At the same time, the others also dispersed one after another. After Xiao Qin left, many of the heavenly Qin continent's warriors also prepared to leave, including the Burning Sky ruler. Unaware of Chu Wuming's thoughts, Xiao Qin quickly arrived at the border of the Moonless Empire through the teleportation array. After a day of hurrying, they arrived at Tianqi City, where there was a teleportation array that led directly to the Tianqi sect. With the existence of the teleportation array, the Heavenly River Continent's warriors had a unique advantage in hurrying. No matter how far the distance was, as long as there was a teleportation array, they could quickly arrive. In less than 2 days, Xiao Qin and his party arrived at the Tianqi sect. It was a pure land with few people. Like a fairyland, it was surrounded by mountains. In the middle of the mountains there was a clear lake. The lake water was blue like a mirror. Around the lake there were intricate ancient buildings. This was where the Celestial Equal Sect was located. "How is it? The scenery of my Tianqi sect isn't bad, right?" Gu Lingyao was very proud of the Tianqi sect's scenery and flaunted to Shao Chen with a smile. Hearing this, Shao Chen nodded and replied, "It is indeed a paradise on earth." The scenery of the celestial equal sect was indeed breathtaking. Living and cultivating in such a place made one's heart unconsciously calm down. Just the celestial equal sect alone had such a paradise. He wondered what the Tianfeng Shengzong would be like. While Shao Chen was full of praise for the Tianqi sect, Mu Feng was completely immersed in the beautiful scenery in front of him. In the face of Shao Chen's praise, Gu Lingyao was very satisfied and skipped along with Shao Chen to see Gu Qi. As for Mu Feng, someone naturally arranged a place for him to stay. Tian Guochuan and the other elders also left one after another. Following behind Gu Lingyao, Shao Chen came to a bamboo courtyard by the lake. This was Gu Qi's residence. When Shao Chen arrived, Gu Qi was already waiting in the bamboo courtyard. Seeing Shao Chen walk over, Gu Qi smiled slightly. "Is everything done?" "Yes. Thank you for your help, sect master." Hearing Gu Qi's words, Shao Chen cupped his hands and thanked him. This time, the Tianqi sect had contributed greatly to the successful destruction of the Heavenly Wolf Empire. Without the Tianqi sect blocking the Qingyang sect, the outcome would have been difficult to predict. In the face of Shao Chen's thanks, Gu Qi waved his hand indifferently and smiled. "It's a small matter. Furthermore, my Tianqi sect has also obtained a lot of benefits this time. It can be considered as both sides taking what they need." Although the Tianqi Empire had fought a great battle with the Qingyang sect this time and lost some disciples and deacons, they had also obtained a lot of benefit. The treasures that the Heavenly Wolf Empire had promised to the Qingyang sect had all been obtained by the Tianqi sect according to the agreement. Therefore, not only did the Tianqi sect not suffer any losses this time, but they had also made a huge profit. Gu Qi did not care about this matter. As soon as he finished speaking, he looked at his daughter, Gu Lingyao, and said with a smile, "Lingyao, you can leave first. Shao Chen and I have some things to talk about in private." What can't you say in front of me? Really?" Hearing Gu Qi's words, Gu Lingyao immediately pouted in dissatisfaction. However, although she said that, she still turned around and left the bamboo courtyard. Looking at his daughter's back, Gu Qi helplessly shook his head and smiled bitterly. Then, after Gu Lingyao left the bamboo courtyard, Gu Qi pointed at the seat opposite him and motioned for Shao Chen to sit. Curious as to what Gu Qi had to say to him that even Gu Lingyao could not listen, Gu Qi sat down and asked with a smile. "Shao Chen, what do you think of my daughter?" Gu Qi suddenly asked. Hearing this, Shao Chen did not understand Gu Qi's meaning for a moment and could only go along with it. He nodded slightly and said, Miss Gu is very good. Her looks are devastatingly beautiful, and her personality is very cheerful and lively. Her talent is also not bad. Very good, very good." Not understanding Gu Qi's meaning, Shao Chen could only reply this way. However, Gu Qi's next sentence completely stunned Shao Chen. Gu Qi said with an inexplicable smile, "Since that's the case, why don't I betroth Lingyao to you?" Hearing this, Shao Chen immediately trembled. "What's going on? Betroth Gu Lingyao to me? Are you kidding me?" Looking at Gu Qi in disbelief, Shao Chen asked embarrassedly. "Sect Master, please don't joke around, okay? Miss Gu and you just praised Lingyao. Since Lingyao is so perfect in your heart, do you think that she is not worthy of you? That's not what I meant, but let me put it this way. To be honest with you, Sect Master, this junior is already married, so, what's wrong with me getting married? What's wrong with us cultivators having a few close female friends? It's not just us men, some powerful women also have a few close female friends. This is very normal. Since you have a good impression of Lingyao, then this matter is settled. I will immediately announce to the public that you and Lingyao will first settle this marriage. In the future, when the two of you have made some progress in your cultivation and slowly develop feelings for each other, it won't be too late to get married. Xiao Chen didn't expect Gu Qi to do this and didn't even give him a chance to refuse. After speaking, Gu Qi didn't give Xiao Chen a chance to reply. He immediately circulated the spiritual energy in his body and spoke in a deep voice. With the support of spiritual energy, Gu Qi's voice quickly spread to every corner of the Tianqi sect. Elders and disciples of the Tianqi sect, listen up. Today, my disciple Xiao Chen and my only daughter, Gu Lingyao, cherish each other and are in love with each other. Therefore, I specially betroth my only daughter, Gu Lingyao, to Xiao Chen as his wife. 3 days later, they will be betrothed first. When they have made some progress in their cultivation, they will choose another auspicious day to get married. Gu Qi's voice was very clear. At the same time, everyone in the Tianqi sect clearly heard his words. Chapter 5:15. As soon as Gu Qi said that, it caused an uproar in the celestial equal sect. As Gu Qi's only daughter, coupled with Gu Lingyao's looks and talent, it was no exaggeration to say that she was the dream goddess of countless people in the celestial equal sect. Many disciples, including the genius disciples, had always regarded Gu Lingyao as their goddess and never allowed anyone to taint her. But now, the woman in their hearts was suddenly betrothed to someone else by Gu Qi. Moreover, the person was someone they had never heard of. At this moment, many disciples in the entire celestial equal sect could be seen shouting angrily. Damn it! Who is this Xiao Chen? I must cripple him. What does sect master mean by this? How can he betroth senior sister Lingyao to someone he has never heard of? Xiao Chen? Is he a disciple of our celestial equal sect? Why haven't I heard of him before? Xiao Chen, don't let me find you. Otherwise, I will definitely cripple you. In an instant, Xiao Chen became the public enemy of all the male disciples of the celestial equal sect. Countless of them declared that they would cripple Xiao Chen. Moreover, it wasn't just them. Gu Lingyao, who had left the bamboo courtyard earlier, also heard her father's words in her residence. Her face sank and she immediately wanted to rush to Gu Qi's residence. Could it be that he asked her to leave just to talk to Xiao Chen about this? She was furious, but apart from that, Gu Lingyao also felt inexplicably shy. She couldn't help but blush. The entire celestial equal sect was in an uproar because of Gu Qi's words. At the same time, Xiao Chen, who was sitting opposite Gu Qi in the bamboo courtyard, was already in a daze. He stared at Gu Qi in disbelief. After a long while, Xiao Chen spoke in a daze. Sect Master, what are you doing? Miss Gu and I, Alright. What's wrong? Don't tell me you don't fancy my daughter? Or do you think Lingyao isn't worthy of you? Before Xiao Chen could finish his sentence, Gu Qi interrupted him. Hearing this, Xiao Chen said with a bitter expression. That's not what I meant. It's just that Miss Gu and I, our relationship is completely… Xiao Chen wanted to say that there was no romantic relationship between her and Gu Lingyao, but Gu Qi interrupted Xiao Chen again. Since it's not, then it's fine. Lingyao is my only daughter. I'll say the ugly words first. In the future, if you dare to let Lingyao down or let her suffer the slightest bit of harm, I'll teach you a lesson. Upon hearing Gu Qi's words, Xiao Chen was completely speechless. He didn't expect that Gu Qi, as the sect master, would force a matchmaking ceremony without asking for his opinion or giving him a chance to reject. Great, Gu Qi had already announced that the engagement would be held in 3 days. With a bitter expression, Gu Lingyao rushed in and shouted at Gu Qi with a furious expression. Father, what's the meaning of this? Why are you betrothing me to this guy? Gu Lingyao turned to Xiao Chen and blushed. However, she still shouted at Xiao Chen. Also, did you say something to father? Facing Gu Lingyao's scolding, Xiao Chen felt helpless. What the F***ck did I say? I didn't say anything. I was forced to do something that was beyond my ability. He wanted to explain, but the father and daughter pair didn't give Xiao Chen a chance to speak. As soon as Gu Lingyao finished speaking, Gu Qi immediately shouted in a deep voice. Shut up! Little girl, how can you scold me like this? I'm the one who betrothed you to Xiao Chen. Xiao Chen didn't say anything. This is my decision. Why? Do you have any objections? Guqi shouted in a deep voice. Hearing this, Xiao Chen was actually a little touched. This old guy finally said something fair. However, Xiao Chen quickly reacted. Damn it, why am I feeling touched here? Wasn't all of this caused by Guqi alone? After hearing Guqi's words, Gu Lingyao didn't want to let it go. She went to Guqi's side and pulled his arm. She pouted and said coquettishly, Father, I'm still young. I don't want to get married so soon. I still want to spend more time with you. All right, this matter has been decided. Let me ask you one question. Do you really not want to marry Xiao Chen? If that's the case, then forget it. Facing Gu Lingyao's coquettishness, Guqi deliberately put on a straight face. Hearing Gu Lingyao's words, Gu Lingyao didn't reply. Her face, which was already red, became even redder. She also avoided Xiao Chen's gaze. In the end, she lowered her head and said coquettishly, I'm not going to talk to you anymore. After saying that, she lowered her head and ran out. She didn't even look at Gu Lingyao. He didn't know what was wrong with Gu Lingyao. Just now, Xiao Chen secretly hoped that Gu Lingyao would directly reject him. If that happened and he agreed from the side, perhaps Guqi would really take back his order. However, who would have thought that Gu Lingyao would directly run away? This made Xiao Chen feel helpless. He thought to himself, what's wrong with this girl? He secretly complained about Gu Lingyao. Only Guqi looked at his daughter's back and a faint smile appeared on his face. All right, Xiao Chen, this matter is settled. 3 days later, I will personally witness your engagement ceremony. You can leave now. As for your residence, I have already arranged it for you. It's right next to Lingyao's. You two should get closer in the future. Without giving Xiao Chen any more chances, Guqi began to chase him away. Seeing this, Xiao Chen seemed to want to say something but hesitated. However, in the end, he still left the bamboo courtyard with a bitter expression. Looking at Guqi's appearance, it was useless to say anything. After Xiao Chen left, Guqi's face immediately revealed a sly smile. However, it quickly disappeared and a serious look flashed across his eyes. I hope this kid is reliable. Otherwise, Lingyao is finished. Guqi sighed softly. As he spoke, he looked at the distant horizon. At the same time, an inexplicable mighty force slowly spread out from Guqi's body. If there was a saint present at this moment, he would definitely turn pale with fright. This was because the aura emitted from Guqi's body belonged to a saint. In other words, the sect master of the Celestial Qi sect, Guqi, was not a half-step saint expert as the world thought. He was a genuine saint expert, a true saint expert who had transcended the mortal world. A saint expert had hidden himself as a half-step saint and established a sect like the Celestial Qi sect in Danyang County. It was obvious that Guqi was hiding from something. Chapter 5:16. Who would have thought that Guqi was actually a saint of the present age? He had deliberately concealed his cultivation level and identity. Guqi must have been hiding something in his heart. However, Xiao Chen obviously had no idea about these things. He left Guqi's residence helplessly. Although Guqi had already told Xiao Chen that his room was next to Gu Lingyao's, Xiao Chen didn't know where Gu Lingyao lived. Moreover, it was his first time in the Tianqi sect, and he couldn't find it at all. Sighing helplessly, Xiao Chen shook his head and smiled bitterly. I've been cheated badly this time. Forget it, let's find someone to ask about his residence first. He felt extremely helpless. What was this? He was cheated by Guqi for no reason. However, it was too late to say anything now. He would take it one step at a time and go to his own residence first. Thinking of this, Xiao Chen planned to find someone to ask where Gu Lingyao's residence was. As long as he found Gu Lingyao's residence, he would naturally be able to find his own residence. Perhaps it was because this was Guqi's residence, so there was no one around. Thinking about it, as the sect master, Guqi's residence wasn't a place where random people could enter and leave as they pleased. He had no choice but to walk all the way out. While Xiao Chen was looking for passers-by, he didn't know that all the male disciples of the Tianqi sect were also looking for Xiao Chen. Many disciples were fighting to be the first to inquire about Xiao Chen's news. Unfortunately, no one in the entire Tianqi sect knew about Xiao Chen's identity. Walking all the way out, Xiao Chen finally met a group of male disciples wearing the Tianqi sect's uniform after walking a long distance away from Guqi's residence. There were 5 of them. Seeing this, Xiao Chen took the initiative to ask, "Senior brothers, I would like to inquire about something. I hope senior brothers can give me some pointers." His attitude was polite. Upon hearing that, the 5 disciples were rather good-natured. The leader smiled and said, "Junior brother, you're too polite. There's no harm in asking." It could be seen that the atmosphere in the Tianqi sect was rather good and the disciples were also rather united. Upon hearing the leader's words, Xiao Chen smiled and said, "I would like to inquire about Senior Sister Gu's residence. I wonder if senior brothers know about it?" The Senior Sister Gu that Xiao Chen mentioned was naturally Gu Lingyao. Upon hearing his words, the 5 disciples were taken aback and looked at Xiao Chen in doubt. They didn't understand why Xiao Chen was inquiring about Gu Lingyao's residence. But soon, the leading disciple seemed to have guessed something, but he still maintained his composure and said with a smile, "Senior brothers, residences. Don't tell me you're also." Junior brother's face revealed a smile that all men understood. Upon seeing this, Xiao Chen naturally knew that junior brother was getting the wrong idea. He explained, "Senior brother, you've misunderstood. I've just entered the Tianqi sect and my residence happened to be next to Senior Sister Gu's. I couldn't find it for the time being, so I'm here to seek guidance from senior brother." He wasn't lying. Xiao Chen had indeed just joined the Tianqi sect and couldn't find his own residence for a while. However, after hearing this, the leading disciple's smile widened, and there was even a hint of coldness in his voice. "Oh, I see. May I know your name, junior brother? In the future, we'll be considered as fellow disciples." "Senior brother, you're too polite. I'm Xiao Chen replied. Xiao Chen. Upon hearing these 2 words, the expressions of the 5 disciples changed immediately. The leader even revealed an, as expected, expression. He immediately changed his previous friendliness and said with a sneer, "You're indeed Xiao Chen. Damn it, you lecher. How dare you have designs on Senior Sister Gu? Today we'll teach you a lesson and let you know the rules of the Tianqi sect." They had already guessed Xiao Chen's identity. After all, Xiao Chen walked out of Guqi's residence and many Tianqi sect disciples couldn't find any information about Xiao Chen. Therefore, the leader guessed that Xiao Chen was most likely not a disciple of the Tianqi sect, or perhaps a disciple who had just entered the Tianqi sect. Therefore, during the conversation with Xiao Chen just now, the leader had already vaguely guessed Xiao Chen's identity. Now that Xiao Chen took the initiative to report his identity, everything was confirmed. After confirming Xiao Chen's identity, the expressions of the 5 disciples changed instantly. Previously, they were extremely friendly, but now they surrounded Xiao Chen. Each of them looked furious and their eyes were burning with raging flames as if they couldn't wait to devour him alive. "Senior brothers, what are you? Is there some misunderstanding? I've just joined the Tianqi sect. I don't think I have any grudges with you, right?" Xiao Chen didn't want to cause any trouble. Faced with such a situation, he opened his mouth to explain. However, in the face of Xiao Chen's explanation, the 5 disciples shouted in unison, "Misunderstanding? Junior brother, don't worry. There's no misunderstanding. We're looking for you." "Looking for me? Senior brother, what do you mean? We don't know each other. Why are you looking for me?" "Why? Kid, keep pretending. A mere new disciple actually dares to have designs on Senior Sister Gu. Although we don't know what kind of bewitching potion you fed sect master, you're courting death if you want to fight senior sister Gu alone. Today, senior brothers and the rest of us will teach you how to behave. After hearing that, Xiao Chun immediately understood the reason. So it was because of Gu Lingyao. He felt helpless. Is Gu Lingyao that popular in the Tianqi sect? Just because of Gu Qi's marriage, he instantly became the common enemy of all the male disciples in the Tianqi sect? At the same time, Xiao Chen also secretly cursed Gu Qi. It's all his fault. If it weren't for him, I wouldn't have ended up like this. After knowing the truth, Xiao Chen looked at the 5 disciples and said rather gloomily, "Senior brothers, listen to me. Actually, I'm also a victim. It's all the sect master's fault. If it weren't for him," he wanted to explain, but in the face of Xiao Chen's explanation, the 5 disciples clearly didn't intend to listen. The leader immediately threw a punch and shouted coldly, "Do you think I'll listen to your sophistry? Cut the crap. Today I'll teach you how to behave properly." He didn't give Xiao Chen a chance to explain at all. Seeing this, Xiao Chen's face sank. Are these guys taking advantage of me? I didn't want to cause trouble. Do these guys think I'm afraid of them? The result was needless to say. How could the 5 of them be a match for Xiao Chen? They were beaten up by Xiao Chen in no time. In less than 100 breaths, the 5 of them were lying at Xiao Chen's feet with bruises all over their faces. Xiao Chen came to the leader of the disciples, squatted down, and asked him with a helpless expression, "Can you listen to me now?" "Yes, yes, yes. Senior brother, if you have any instructions, just say it. Even if I have to climb a mountain of swords or plunge into a sea of fire, I'll do it without hesitation." Facing Xiao Chen, the disciple's face was filled with horror as he nodded repeatedly. Chapter 5:17. After being taught a lesson by Xiao Chen, the 5 disciples had clearly learned their lesson. Their faces were no longer filled with anger. Helplessly shaking his head with a bitter smile, Xiao Chen thought to himself, "These guys are really despicable. I tried to talk to them nicely, but they didn't listen. They just had to beat them up." Looking at the terrified disciple, Xiao Chen said calmly, "You should know where Senior Gu's residence is, right?" I know. Hearing Xiao Chen's words, the disciple nodded repeatedly. Then, he respectfully told Xiao Chen where Gu Lingyao's residence was. After knowing where Gu Lingyao lived, Xiao Chen did not make things difficult for the 5 of them and left on his own. Soon, he found Gu Lingyao's residence according to the disciples' words. Needless to say, Gu Lingyao's residence was not something that an ordinary disciple could have. Even some of the elders' residences were not as good as Gu Lingyao's. Not only was the environment beautiful, but the spirit energy was also extremely dense. Next to Gu Lingyao's residence, Xiao Chen found an empty courtyard. It should be his residence. After pushing open the door and entering, just as Xiao Chen walked into the small courtyard, a maid came out to greet him. When she saw Xiao Chen, the maid was stunned at first. However, she quickly recovered and bowed respectfully. "May I ask if you are Senior Xiao Chen?" She must have received a notice in advance and knew that Xiao Chen was the owner of this courtyard. Hearing the maid's question, Xiao Chen nodded slightly and said, "That's right, it's me." At the same time that Xiao Chen had successfully found his residence, on the other side, the 5 disciples who had been beaten up by Xiao Chen had quickly spread the news about Xiao Chen. They had no intention of taking revenge on Xiao Chen. It was all because of Gu Lingyao. When they heard that Xiao Chen was actually a new disciple and that Gu Qi had arranged for Xiao Chen's residence to be next to Gu Lingyao's residence, the countless male disciples in the Tianqi sect were once again in an uproar. Damn it, this guy is just a new disciple. What right does he have to live next to Senior Gu? That's right. Let's go and find him now. If I don't teach him a lesson today, how can I swallow this anger in my chest? After hearing the news about Xiao Chen's news, many disciples spontaneously rushed to Xiao Chen's residence. They all admired Gu Lingyao, but they also knew very well that Gu Lingyao definitely wouldn't take a fancy to them. But wasn't there a saying that a goddess would always belong to the masses? If I can't have her, I won't let other men have her either. Otherwise, I won't be happy. Inexplicably, he became the public enemy of all the male disciples in the Tianqi sect, unaware that everyone was rushing to his residence in anger. At that moment, Xiao Chen casually strolled around his residence. Putting everything else aside, the place that Gu Qi had arranged for him was pretty good. At least, Xiao Chen was satisfied with it. Xiao Chen familiarized himself with his surroundings. It was at this moment that the servant girl from before hurriedly ran to Xiao Chen with a worried look on her face. "Senior brother Xiao Chen, bad news." The maid trotted all the way to Xiao Chen without caring about etiquette and said anxiously. Upon seeing this, Xiao Chen smiled and said, "What's wrong?" "Senior brother Xiao Chen, they're here for you. They've already surrounded the courtyard." "For me? Who?" "Of course it's those male disciples who admire senior sister Gu. When they heard that senior brother is going to be engaged to senior sister Gu, they were jealous. I don't know who told them that senior brother is staying here, but now hundreds of disciples have surrounded the courtyard." Hundreds of male disciples had surrounded the courtyard, and more were on their way here. Upon hearing the maid's words, Xiao Chen was on the verge of tears. What the hell was going on? He was being hated by everyone for no reason at all. After taking a deep breath, Xiao Chen vaguely heard a series of angry shouts coming from outside the courtyard. "Xiao Chen, get out here. I want to duel with you." "Xiao Chen, are you going to be a coward?" "Xiao Chen, do you think you can hide today? I'll give you 10 breaths of time. If you don't come out, we'll fight our way in." The shouts were all for Xiao Chen to come out and fight. What duel? What one-on-one? Xiao Chen was incomparably depressed. Damn it, do they really think I'm a sick cat when I'm not showing my might? With a cold glint in his eyes, Xiao Chen strode out of the courtyard. At this moment, the courtyard door slowly opened, and Xiao Chen strode out of the courtyard. As for the maid, she hid behind the door in fear. Seeing that Xiao Chen had finally appeared, the disciples quieted down for a moment. At the same time, Xiao Chen also looked around at the crowd and said indifferently, "I have no grudges with any of you. Do you really think that I, Xiao Chen, am easy to bully?" His tone was very calm, but there was a hint of coldness in it. Originally, Xiao Chen did not want to cause trouble. Moreover, he had no grudges with these disciples in the past, so Xiao Chen did not want to provoke them. Moreover, he had been completely tricked by Gu Lingyao. Originally, he wanted to keep the peace. However, these guys had surrounded his residence and made a ruckus. If he could tolerate it, what else could he do? Moreover, Xiao Chen's temper was not very good. At this moment, anger had already risen in his heart. Hearing this, the crowd looked at each other. However, soon, the leader jumped out and shouted angrily. "Xiao Chen, you know why we're here. You're just a new disciple. What right do you have to have Senior Gu? We can't accept it. You can't accept it." Hearing this disciple's words, Xiao Chen was a little amused. The corners of his mouth curled up slightly, revealing a disdainful smile. "Is there something wrong with your brain? You still can't accept it? Do you think this thing between a man and a woman is some F***king competition or a lucky draw? So what if I'm new? Can't I get Gu Lingyao's favor?" While Xiao Chen was angry at these guys' thinking, he also felt that it was funny. Are you kidding me? This is a F***king matter between a man and a woman. Now you're saying that you can't accept it? You're simply an idiot. He did not hide the disdain in his heart. Hearing Xiao Chen's words, many of the disciples present were stunned at first. However, they were soon filled with anger. A few of the leading disciples strode forward and shouted angrily, "Xiao Chen, cut the crap. Do you have the guts to fight with us?" "Fight?" Hearing this, Xiao Chen laughed. These guys were a bunch of cowards. He did not dare to pursue Gu Lingyao, but he also did not allow other men to get close to Gu Lingyao. Hearing these disciples' angry shouts, Xiao Chen replied coldly. A bunch of cowards. There's no need for a fight. I'll give you 10 breaths of time to get out of my sight. Otherwise, after 10 breaths of time, you'll have to bear the consequences. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.